Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into the shadowy realm of folklore, seeking out a legend that has echoed through hillsides and valleys for centuries. Picture this. You're high on a windswept plateau, the kind where the air bites at your cheeks and the only sounds are the bleating of sheep and the sigh of the wind. Before you, nestled amongst rough-hewn rocks, is a dark opening, a cave mouth swallowed by shadow. This is the place where stories say shepherds would enter, seeking shelter, maybe just curiosity, but only their flocks would ever return. It's a classic setup, isn't it? The kind of mystery where you probably wouldn't survive the first 5 minutes trying to solve it yourself in real life. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, seriously, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. It's wild to think where these sleepy whispers travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself on this high, lonely ground. The sun, if there is one, is already dipping towards the horizon, casting long, distorted shadows that make the rocks look like hunched figures. The air smells of dry earth, maybe a hint of wild thyme crushed underfoot, and the faint, ever-present scent of woolly livestock. It's a smell you know well, as a shepherd in this time. This place lost somewhere in the mists of ancient history. Your life is simple, tied to the rhythms of the sun, the seasons, and the needs of your flock. You guide them across the landscape, finding patches of graze, leading them to water, protecting them from predators, both the four-legged kind and sometimes the two-legged ones. Your world is immediate, practical, focused on survival and the well-being of these creatures who represent your livelihood, your family's sustenance. Today has been long. The sheep have been a bit restless, maybe sensing the change in the air, a coolness creeping in. You've been pushing them towards the lower slopes, looking for a sheltered spot for the night. That's when you see it, a dark cleft in the rock face, barely more than a shadow at first. But as you get closer, it resolves into a definite opening. A cave, not a huge grand cavern you might hear tales of, but a humble entrance, perhaps only shoulder width in places, sloping down into blackness. It looks like it could offer protection from the night wind, maybe even a sudden shower if the clouds gathering overhead decide to open up. It feels ancient. Everything around here feels ancient, of course, but this feels different, like the rock itself remembers things you can only guess at. Leading sheep is mostly about gentle persuasion and knowing their habits. They're creatures of comfort and habit, these woolly tanks. They like routine, they like safety, and they really don't like going into dark, unknown holes. But you're the shepherd. You know how to coax them. You call to them with a soft, rhythmic tone, perhaps toss a handful of grain or a tasty sprig of browse just inside the opening. The lead ewes, trusting your judgment, take a tentative step. Their hooves scrape on the rock floor, echoing strangely in the confined space. One by one, the flock begins to follow, a tide of soft bleating and rustling wool pouring into the darkness. You stand at the entrance, watching them disappear. The light fades quickly once they pass the immediate opening. You can still hear them, the shifting weight, the occasional baa, but they are swallowed by the gloom. This is routine, right? Finding shelter is part of the job. You expect to follow them in, settle them down, perhaps build a small, smokeless fire if there's fuel and ventilation, and rest your weary bones for the night, keeping an ear out for wolves or anything else that might disturb your charges. You tighten the simple belt around your tunic, adjust the staff in your hand, and prepare to step into the dark. This is where the familiar path diverges, where the mundane turns into the mysterious. Because the story, the whisper that travels on the wind, isn't about you finding a cozy night's rest. It's about what happens after the sheep go in. You step forward, cross the threshold from the fading light of the outside world into the absolute dark of the cave. The last glimpse of the sky is swallowed. The sound of the wind is muffled. All that's left is the close, earthy smell of the cave and the nearby presence of your flock. You take one step, then another, your hand trailing along the rough rock face. You call out softly to the sheep, reassuring them, and perhaps counting them in your head. And then, and then the story gets hazy. The details of what happens inside are never clear. Was there a sound, a strange light? Did you feel a sudden chill, a sense of disorientation? The legends don't dwell on your experience because you, the shepherd, are no longer part of the narrative in an active sense. Your role abruptly shifts from protagonist to vanished. Poof, gone, like a sock in the dryer of ancient mysteries. What the story does focus on is the aftermath, the inexplicable part that birthed the legend. Sometime later, the storytellers vary the time, sometimes minutes, sometimes hours. The sheep emerge. They don't stream out in a panic, although they might be a little skittish. They come out alone. One by one, or in small groups, they file back out of that dark opening, their wool perhaps dusted with cave dirt, their eyes blinking in the returning light or the moonlight or the dawn. They are the same sheep that went in, accounted for, seemingly unharmed. But the shepherd, the human who led them there, who was supposed to bring them back out, nowhere to be seen, vanished without a trace within those cold, silent stones. This is the core, the persistent, unsettling image of the legend. The sheep, dumb animals following instinct and their leader, pass through some barrier, some experience, and return. The shepherd, with consciousness, purpose, and connection to the human world, enters the same space and is lost forever. It's a stark, unsettling contrast. The familiar comfort of livestock returning home is overshadowed by the chilling absence of their keeper. It's the kind of story that makes you eye every dark hole in the ground a little suspiciously, isn't it? Makes you think twice about taking a shortcut through that spooky-looking ravine. Imagine being the first person to witness this. Maybe you were another shepherd grazing nearby, or a farmer on a neighboring plot of land, or perhaps someone just happened to be passing by this desolate spot. You see the sheep emerging, but you don't see the shepherd. You wait, you call out. No answer. You approach the cave cautiously, maybe peer into the darkness. Nothing but shadows and the faint receding sound of the sheep moving away from the entrance, heading back towards known territory. You wouldn't go in yourself, not alone, not knowing what just happened. Who would? Well, okay, someone eventually would, because that's how legends get tested, usually by someone less cautious or more desperate than you. We'll get to them later, but for now, the mystery hangs heavy in the air. Where did the shepherd go? There's no struggle visible at the entrance. No sign of foul play immediately apparent. Just absence. An emptiness where a person should be. The sheep, the sole witnesses, offer no explanation beyond their silent, woolly presence. They just graze nervously nearby, or perhaps start moving back towards the lowlands instinctively, leaving the enigmatic cave behind. It's the perfect setup for a story that gets passed down, whispered around firesides on cold nights, embellished with each retelling. A story about a place that takes people, but gives the animals back. It's bizarre, isn't it? Almost like the cave has a specific appetite. People? Yes, please. Sheep? Nah, you guys are cool, go on. This simple yet deeply unsettling narrative hook, the disappearing shepherd, the returning sheep, is what gives the legend its power and longevity. It's primal. It touches on our fear of the unknown, of losing loved ones, and of forces beyond our understanding. It also taps into the ancient relationship between humans and domesticated animals, a bond that was absolutely central to survival for vast stretches of human history. Shepherds weren't just workers, they were guardians, protectors. Losing a shepherd wasn't just losing a person, it was potentially endangering the entire flock, the wealth and food source of a community. So, a story where the flock survives but the shepherd is lost is doubly disturbing. Think about the sheer number of people throughout history whose lives revolved around livestock. Before industrialization, before mass agriculture as we know it, herding was itiwaman for huge populations across Europe, Asia, Africa, and parts of the Americas. The relationship between humans and their domesticated animals dates back tens of thousands of years, a mainstream historical fact that underscores why a story about a shepherd and sheep would resonate so deeply and widely. The very fabric of society in many ancient and medieval periods was woven from wool, hides, milk, and meat, all products of herding. It wasn't just an occupation. It was a way of life, shaping cultures, economies, and even religious beliefs. So a threat to the shepherd, the guardian of this vital resource, was a threat to everything. Within this context, a story about a place that swallows shepherds becomes more than just a spooky tale. It becomes a cautionary myth, a way of encoding danger into the landscape itself. Perhaps it served a practical purpose originally, warning people away from a genuinely dangerous spot. Or perhaps it was a way to explain inexplicable losses. Someone goes missing while out with the flock. Rather than facing the grim reality of accidents, predators, or human enemies, maybe it was easier to say, they must have gone near that cave. It gives a name, albeit a terrifying one, to the void left by absence. Historians still argue whether specific folklore legends like this one originate from a single real event that was distorted over time, or if they are composite myths drawing on general fears and observations. Was there ever a real cave where a shepherd disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and that became the kernel of the story? Or did the idea of a dangerous, mysterious cave simply attach itself to the common reality of shepherds spending time in remote, potentially perilous places? It's a classic chicken or the egg scenario for folklorists. Did the myth create the perceived danger, or did the danger inspire the myth? We may never know definitively, but the debate itself highlights how folklore isn't just entertainment. It's a complex reflection of human experience and attempts to make sense of the world. There's also a quirky, almost humorous element to focus on for a moment. Even in this eerie setup, the sheep, they just come back, unharmed. It adds a layer of absurdity to the terror. Imagine the conversation if sheep could talk. Yeah, Jeff went in, bit weird in there, kind of tingly, then suddenly he wasn't behind us anymore. Anyway, felt like time for dinner, so we came out. Anyone got snacks? It almost makes you wonder if the cave just found the shepherd irritatingly chatty, or maybe smelled faintly of dog, and decided to optimize its interior environment. Okay, woolly quiet types, you can stay. Talkers, to the void you go. It's a silly thought, I know, but sometimes a touch of the absurd helps process the truly inexplicable. Besides, sheep are notoriously unimpressed by existential horror. Is the grass green? Yes? Okay then. So, the legend is born from this simple, shocking event. Shepherd enters cave, sheep leave cave. Shepherd does not. It's a tale told and retold, changing slightly with each mouth that speaks it, each ear that hears it. The cave itself might gain a name, or it might remain just the cave in a specific valley or on a certain hillside. Its location shifting slightly, depending on who is telling the story and where they feel safe is pointing. But the core image remains constant. The dark mouth, the entering human, the returning animals, and the profound, terrifying absence left behind. This initial mystery is the hook, the puzzle box that the legend presents, drawing listeners in and prompting questions that resonate across generations. What was in that cave? What happened to the shepherd? And why, for crying out loud, did the sheep make it out? These are the questions that keep the story alive, making it the perfect subject for a deep dive into the history of fear, folklore, and the enduring mysteries of the earth. You've stepped onto the path of this legend now, the path leading to that dark opening. The sheep have gone ahead. Are you ready to follow? Maybe just with your mind, safely tucked in bed, far from any casual, spooky holes in the ground. Word count, 2148. Awaiting continue, section 2, you're still feeling that chill, aren't you? That faint prickle the legend leaves behind, even under the bright sun. It's a story that feels ancient, woven into the very fabric of the land itself. And that's because, well, it probably is. We're not talking about a story that popped up last Tuesday or even last century. Legends like this, particularly those tied to specific, unchanging geographical features, have roots that run astonishingly deep, back through millennia, long before anyone decided to invent parchment or cuneiform tablets. We're talking about a time when history wasn't written down, it was spoken, passed from grandparent to grandchild, from one shepherd generation to the next, whispered around fires that were themselves ancient landmarks on the landscape of time. Imagine this, the very first time a shepherd went into that cave and didn't come out, while his flock wandered back blinking in the sunlight. The sheer shock, the confusion, the fear. There was no police report, no missing person bulletin tacked to a corkboard, because, no corkboards, no paper, often no police in the modern sense. All there was the empty space where a person used to be and the bewildered sheep. And the story began. He went in there, he didn't come out, but his sheep did. Simple, horrifying, memorable. Over time, as it was retold, perhaps the details shifted. Maybe in one telling, the shepherd was chasing a special sheep, one that seemed oddly drawn to the darkness. In another, maybe there was a strange sound heard just before he vanished. The core element, the vanishing human, the returning sheep, would likely remain, because that's the hook. The part that defies logic and makes the story stick in the mind like burrs in wool. Think of it as an evolutionary process for narratives. The bits that are compelling, strange, and maybe a little terrifying are the ones that survive the generations. The boring bits, like how he folded his cloak or what he had for breakfast that day, they get pruned away. It's like nature selecting for the most vibrant plumage or the sharpest claws. Folklore selects for the most intriguing paradox. These deep time origins mean the story predates not just writing, but potentially even settled agriculture in this specific spot. It might go back to times when humans were still largely nomadic, following flocks or game trails, seeing this cave not just as a landmark, but as something charged with meaning. Caves globally hold a special place in human history and mythology. They were often the first shelters, the first canvases for art. Think cave paintings stretching back tens of thousands of years. Pretty cool, huh? The first places of ritual and burial. They are natural entrances into the earth. And before science offered geological explanations, any deep hole in the ground could easily be perceived as an entrance to somewhere else. Somewhere hidden, mysterious, and potentially dangerous. It makes sense that a story about vanishing into a cave would resonate deeply with peoples who spent time sheltering in, exploring, or revering such places. Consider the worldview of people living in these deep time periods. They weren't staring at glowing rectangles or scrolling through endless feeds. Their connection to the natural world was immediate and profound. The sun's movement dictated their day, the moon and stars guided them at night. The weather was a matter of survival, and the landscape itself felt alive. Rocks, trees, springs, mountains, and especially caves could all be imbued with spirit, personality, or power. This is the realm of animism, the belief that spirits inhabit natural objects and phenomena. A cave wasn't just a hole, it could be the lair of a spirit, a deity's home, a place where the rules of the surface world didn't apply. Within this framework, the story of the cave where shepherds vanished takes on a different dimension. It's not just an unsolved mystery, it's proof that the spirit of the cave has preferences. It accepts the sheep, maybe seeing them as part of the natural world it oversees, but it rejects or consumes the humans, perhaps seeing them as intruders, or beings whose consciousness or souls are fundamentally incompatible with its own mysterious nature. Maybe the spirit found humans too noisy, too demanding, or perhaps they smelled of something it didn't like that experimental attempt at fermented sheep milk cheese you tried last week. That was memorable. How could a seemingly simple geological feature gain such a fearsome reputation? Think about the practical dangers first. Even today, caves can be treacherous. Hidden drops, unstable rock, suffocating gases, getting lost in absolute darkness. Any one of these could lead to a shepherd entering and never returning. But for the sheep to return unharmed, that's the wrinkle. Perhaps the sheep were less adventurous, stopping just inside the entrance while the human pressed on. Perhaps they were hardier against certain gases. Perhaps, most simply, they just got bored and wandered back out the way they came, while the human was already irretrievably lost deeper within. Over many generations, the practical dangers, the hidden pit, the bad air pocket, might fade from the story, smoothed away by time and retelling. What remains is the outcome, the vanishing. And because there's no simple, visible explanation, the mind grasps for something else, something beyond the mundane. The danger becomes personified, attributed to the place itself having malevolent intent or strange power. The cave takes people. The sheep are irrelevant to its hunger, or perhaps even guided out by its strange rules. It's a story born from observed tragedy, filtered through a worldview where the natural and the supernatural were not separate realms, but intimately intertwined. Like trying to separate your morning coffee from your need to wake up. They're just part of the same process, right? This is how folklore builds layers. An initial event, a shepherd disappears in a cave, becomes a core incident. Explanations are sought within the cultural understanding of the time. The cave has a spirit, it's an entrance to the underworld. The story is retold, details are added or lost, maybe merging with other local beliefs or strange occurrences. Eventually, the original, possibly mundane trigger is completely obscured by the rich, complex tapestry of the legend itself. It becomes a story about the nature of the cave, rather than a specific, unfortunate accident that happened near the cave. It's like how the story of a particularly nasty stubbed toe can, over enough retellings, become a tale of a vengeful garden gnome. These oral traditions are incredibly resilient. They carry information, warnings, and cultural values across vast periods, performing the function that written history and scientific inquiry do for us today. They explain the world, they lay down rules like don't go in that cave, and they connect people to their past and their landscape. The rhythm of the telling, the repetition, the performance aspects, all help to imprint the story onto the collective memory of the community. Imagine listening to this story as a child, huddled close to the fire, the wind howling outside, maybe sounding a bit like whispers from a cave entrance. That story would stick with you, wouldn't it? It becomes part of your understanding of that mountain, that hillside. A mainstream historical fact about oral traditions. Before widespread literacy and the invention of printing presses, oral traditions were the primary means of transmitting history, laws, literature, and cultural knowledge across generations in almost every human society. Skillful storytellers and bards were vital figures, capable of memorizing and reciting vast amounts of information, often employing rhythmic or poetic structures to aid recall, perhaps giving our cave legend a compelling, rhythmic cadence that helped it endure. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, some speculative theories about ancient oral traditions suggest that certain repetitive phrases or seemingly nonsensical elements found in very old stories might have originally been mnemonic devices, cues, or triggers to help the storyteller remember the next part of a long narrative, or even coded references to practical survival information that would be less obvious to outsiders but vital for the community. Could a phrase in the original cave legend, now lost or garbled, have been a practical warning disguised as folklore? Probably not, but it's a fun thought. And here's where an open scholarly debate arises. Historians and anthropologists still argue about the extent to which modern folklore, especially legends tied to specific places, can be reliably traced back to actual historical events, or whether they primarily reflect deeper, archetypal human fears and narratives. Is the story of the vanishing shepherds a highly distorted echo of a real tragedy? Or is it a timeless expression of humanity's primal fear of the dark, the unknown, and the boundary between the living world and whatever lies beneath? There are compelling arguments on both sides, and often, for any specific legend, the truth is frustratingly out of reach, lost in the silence of those unwritten millennia. The sheer scale of that time is hard to grasp. Imagine generations upon generations of shepherds, born, living their lives under the same sun and stars, dying, all while that story, that warning about the cave, persists. The faces change, the languages might subtly shift, tools evolve from stone to bronze to iron, but the dark opening on the hillside and the unsettling tale about who goes in and who comes out remains. It's a testament to the power of narrative, especially one that taps into fundamental human fears and presents an enduring paradox. It becomes more than just a story. It becomes part of the geography itself, a feature as real in the minds of the people as the rock and dust under their feet. And understanding that deep root helps us appreciate just how profoundly the legend would have shaped the lives and beliefs of those who lived in its shadow. Now remember that faint metallic tang you noticed, like ancient pennies left in damp wool? It's getting stronger as you approach this slit in the rock face. It's less of an opening, more of a jagged tear in the mountainside, barely wide enough for one person to shimmy through sideways. You have to turn your body, one shoulder leading, and exhale sharply as you feel the cold, rough stone scrape against your outer layers. It's a tight fit, tighter than you expected, and for a fleeting second, a little whisper of claustrophobia tickles the back of your neck. Just a cave entrance, you tell yourself. Plenty of people have gone in. Yeah, plenty of people. Maybe not the sheep, though. Funny how they were smarter than the humans this one time. As you squeeze deeper, the last sliver of daylight disappears. The air immediately changes. It's no longer just cool. It's damp, heavy, and carries that unique earthy scent. The smell of ancient dust, minerals leaching from the rock, and something else. Something organic, but not quite rotten. Just old. Like unwrapping a mummy, maybe, though hopefully without the accompanying curse. Or, the mummy. That would be a whole different kind of podcast. The transition is abrupt. One moment you're squinting at the bright, harsh sunlight reflecting off the dry landscape. The next you're enveloped in absolute blackness. Your eyes, so recently adjusted to the glare, are useless. You have to rely entirely on touch and sound. Your hands, outstretched, tentatively, brush against cold, uneven rock surfaces. Sometimes it's smooth and worn, slick with moisture. Other times it's sharp and jagged, threatening to snag your clothes or scrape your knuckles. You move slowly, deliberately, your breath fogging in the sudden chill. The sound of your own breathing and the shuffle of your feet on the stony floor are amplified in the confined space. Every tiny sound seems louder, clearer. A distant drip of water, the scuttling sound of something small, probably just a beetle or a spider, you hope, and the faint echo of your own heart hammering a little faster than normal. This immediate sensory shift is profound. It's like stepping into a different world, one where the rules of light and sound are skewed. Think about how your brain works in the light, processing vast amounts of visual information in an instant. Now strip that away. Your other senses have to pick up the slack, working overtime. Your fingertips become your eyes, mapping the contours of the passage. Your ears strain to distinguish between natural cave sounds and potential, anything. And your nose is busy trying to decipher that complex aroma. Historically, caves have always held a certain mystique, right? They were shelters, yes, but also places of ritual, burial, and mystery. Entering a cave was often seen as descending into the underworld, a journey into the unknown. This feeling is palpable as you push forward. The passage twists and turns slightly, preventing you from seeing even a faint outline of the entrance behind you. You are committed now. There's no turning back easily in this narrow squeeze. It reminds you, in a weird way, of trying to put on jeans that are just a little too tight after Thanksgiving dinner. You're in, but extraction might require a significant amount of effort and perhaps a small amount of regret. The rock pressing in on you feels ancient, its very texture speaking of unimaginable timescales. Geologists can look at rock formations and tell you stories of immense pressure, tectonic shifts, and the slow, steady work of water over millennia. This stone isn't just a wall, it's a record of geological history. You might brush your hand against layers of sediment laid down when this region was perhaps a shallow sea, or feel the sharp edges of a fracture caused by colossal forces deep within the earth. Mainstream historical fact alert: caves like this one, formed in limestone or similar soluble rock, are often created by the slow dissolution of the rock by acidic groundwater over hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years. It's a process called karstification. So you're essentially wading into a giant, millennia-old rock soda experiment. Don't lick the walls, though, seriously. Probably won't taste like cherry. As you feel your way along, you notice the air getting colder. The cave acts like a natural refrigerator, maintaining a relatively constant temperature regardless of the outside fluctuations. In the summer heat, it's a blessed relief. In the winter, it might feel less hospitable. But right now, it's a cool, damp embrace after the dry warmth outside. The air feels thick, almost tangible. You might encounter a spot where the ceiling lowers unexpectedly, forcing you to duck or even crawl on your hands and knees for a few feet. This vulnerability, the need to contort your body and rely on your hands and knees on the rough floor, heightens the sense of exposure. You are not walking upright and confident. You are navigating a primal, unyielding environment. It's a humbling experience, a reminder of how easily nature can strip away your modern conveniences and force you back to a more basic way of being. Your phone signal is definitely gone, by the way. Trying to call for a pizza delivery from here is probably not going to work. Hello, yeah, I'm stuck in a cave. Can I get a large pepperoni? Extra darkness. Just a quirky tidbit. Did you know that cave environments can sometimes preserve organic materials incredibly well due to the stable temperature and lack of light? Ancient pollen, fossilized bones, even delicate plant matter can be found remarkably intact after thousands of years. Some of the best evidence for early human life, like cave paintings or tools, comes from these preserved cave environments. So while you're feeling your way through the dark, remember you might be brushing past a surface that has remained virtually unchanged since the last ice age. Or maybe since Gary from accounting misplaced his keys down here last week. Probably not Gary, but you get the idea. The sounds continue to play tricks on your ears. That distant drip might sound like footsteps in the profound silence. The scuttling could be larger than you first thought. Your own movements, amplified by the acoustics of the confined space, seem clumsier, louder. Every scrape of your shoe, every brush against the wall, echoes slightly. This auditory landscape is completely different from the outside world, where sounds dissipate quickly in the open air. Here, sound bounces and lingers, creating a disorienting effect. Scholarly debate phrase. Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of early human use of caves was purely pragmatic, shelter from weather and predators, or if there was always an underlying spiritual or ritualistic dimension to their use. Was it just a convenient hole in the ground, or a portal to something more? As you feel the ancient stone press in on you, it's easy to lean towards the something more side of that debate. It just feels significant. You continue to shuffle forward, one step, then another, feeling the slight incline or decline of the passage floor beneath your feet. The air might shift subtly, a faint draft suggesting another opening or a larger chamber ahead. There's no natural light source to guide you, only the increasing familiarity with the immediate feel of the rock and the subtle changes in the air and sound. It's a slow, deliberate process, completely different from walking on a paved street or even hiking a clear trail. This is navigation by primal instinct and sensory input, honed by millennia of human ancestors using similar spaces. Or maybe just like trying to find the light switch in a dark room at 3 a.m. after you've just woken up. Same level of graceful movement, probably. The entrance passage feels surprisingly long. Each twist and turn seems to take you deeper, severing the last ties to the world outside. The thought of the sheep returning alone feels a little more ominous now. They clearly didn't like this part, and you can see why. It requires patience, a tolerance for discomfort, and a willingness to trust your non-visual senses completely. It's a test, in a way, of your ability to adapt to an environment that is fundamentally alien to your everyday experience. You are leaving the familiar behind, step by slow step, inch by careful inch, as you push deeper into the mountain's embrace. You push through that tight squeeze, feeling the rock give way not just behind you, but around you. Suddenly, the oppressive feeling of stone pressing against your ribs eases. The passage blessedly begins to widen. It's not a sudden, dramatic drop into a cavern the size of a football stadium. Not yet, anyway. It's a gradual, almost reluctant opening, like the mountain is grudgingly allowing you a little more space to breathe. You can straighten up slightly, maybe even take a full, deep breath without feeling like you're about to suction cup yourself to the ceiling. The ability to stand taller, to stretch your arms out a little to the sides without hitting rock, feels like an immense luxury after that claustrophobic shuffle. As the space expands, the acoustics shift dramatically. The sharp, amplified sounds of your own movements and breathing start to soften. They don't disappear, but they lose that immediate, intimate echo chamber effect. Instead, sounds travel further, bouncing off unseen walls and ceilings deep within the mountain. That distant drip of water, which sounded like it was just around the corner in the narrow passage, now seems much farther away, a tiny, persistent rhythm somewhere in the echoing darkness ahead. The scuttling sound, if you heard it, also becomes less distinct, maybe just a faint rustle or scratch that could be anything. The air changes again, too. The dampness is still there, that cool, earthy smell, but it's mixed with something else now. It's a subtle shift, hard to place, but it feels fresher, perhaps, or maybe just different. In larger cave spaces, air currents can develop, moving through connections you can't see, bringing faint whiffs of whatever lies deeper within the system. It could be minerals, or perhaps the faintest scent of something organic living in this perpetual night. It's the smell of a world without sunlight, a world that has developed its own unique ecosystem independent of the world above. It's like opening a very old, very dark cellar door. You expect mustiness, maybe a hint of potato storage, but this is deeper, more fundamental. With the passage wider, you can tentatively pick up the pace a little, though you're still moving cautiously. You can use your hands more to brace yourself against the walls than to feel for the path ahead. The floor underfoot might become slightly smoother or more uneven depending on the geological forces that shape this particular section. You might feel loose scree shifting under your boots, or step onto a patch of damp clay that threatens to suck your foot in just a little. Every step is a small experiment, a test of the terrain. And as your non-visual senses continue their overtime shift, you start to become aware of the other inhabitants of this realm. You are not alone in here, even if you are the only human or former shepherd, depending on how deep we go with this mental roleplay. This is where the cave truly starts to feel alive in a way you might not have considered before. The first signs might be auditory, a faint squeak from above, the rustle of delicate wings. Cave life alert. Bats. If the cave has a suitable entrance or connection to the surface, it can be a significant bat habitat. They might be hanging from the ceiling, sleeping through the day, which is indistinguishable from night in here, of course. Or perhaps flitting silently through the larger spaces, using their remarkable echolocation to navigate and hunt. Hearing their calls, which are often too high-pitched for humans to hear directly, but can sometimes create a subtle presence in the air, is a stark reminder that you've entered their domain. Don't worry, most cave bats aren't interested in your hair. They're after insects, mostly, unless you're a very large, slow-moving insect with surprisingly tasty hair. Probably not the case, but full disclosure. As your eyes slowly begin to adapt to the absolute lack of light, they might start picking up the faintest differences in the blackness. Is that wall slightly less black than the space between it and you? Is there a texture there that isn't uniform? These are just your brain desperately trying to make sense of nothing, of course. But sometimes, just sometimes, your eyes might catch the briefest flicker. Maybe a reflection off a damp surface, or the movement of something small. You might feel a fine thread brush against your face, a spider web. Caves have spiders, often species specifically adapted to the dark, food-scarce environment. Their webs might be stretched across narrow points, hoping to catch some unfortunate insect or bat. You might not see the spider itself, but the tangible proof of its presence is there. It's like walking into a Halloween decoration store that hasn't paid its light bill in a few centuries. Cobwebs everywhere, but no plastic skeletons or sale signs. Then there are the less visible, but equally present, life forms. Bacteria and fungi thrive in these dark, damp environments, forming strange mats or films on the rock surfaces. Some of these microbes are chemosynthetic, meaning they derive energy from chemical reactions in the rock or water rather than sunlight. They form the base of a unique food chain, supporting creatures that feed on them. It's like a tiny, invisible buffet happening on the walls all around you. Try not to lick the walls, though. Still definitely not cherry. You might also encounter cave crickets, long-legged, blind insects that use their antennae to navigate. Their jerky movements and sudden hops can be startling in the silence. Or perhaps blind salamanders or fish in underground streams, adapted to life without light, often pale or translucent due to the lack of pigment. This quirky tidbit about cave life adaptations is fascinating. Many cave-dwelling species have lost their eyesight entirely, which is energetically expensive to maintain in a world without light, and instead have heightened other senses like touch, smell, and hearing. They might have longer antennae, more sensitive hairs, or specialized sensory organs to navigate their pitch-black world. Evolution gets really creative when the sun is off. The air might start to feel different again. Sometimes in larger chambers, the temperature can be remarkably stable, reflecting the deep Earth's constant warmth rather than surface fluctuations. There might be a subtle draft, indicating a connection to other parts of the cave system, or even a hidden exit high up on a cliff face somewhere far away. You might feel a breath of colder, heavier air sinking from a passage above, or warmer, lighter air rising. These subtle shifts in temperature and airflow are like the cave's whispers, hinting at its true size and complexity. As you move deeper into this widening space, the sense of scale begins to change. What felt like a small, intimate passage now hints at larger voids beyond. The echoes carry further, suggesting ceilings and walls that are no longer just inches or a few feet away, but potentially scores of feet in the distance. It's like moving from a narrow hallway into a large, dark room. You can't see the walls, but you can feel the space. This transition from the tight squeeze to a more open passage reflects a common feature of many cave systems. Often, entrances are small and constricted, perhaps due to collapse or sedimentation, leading into much larger, deeper chambers formed by the more extensive action of water over time. Mainstream historical fact. Geologically, the formation of larger cave passages and chambers often occurs in areas where the soluble rock layers are thicker or where underground rivers have flowed for millennia, carving out significant voids. These larger spaces are called chambers or rooms, as distinct from the narrower passages or tunnels you just navigated. You've essentially moved from the cave's trachea into one of its lungs, but, made of rock and significantly less squishy. The floor might slope down more noticeably here, or perhaps become relatively flat. You might feel slick, muddy patches, or encounter pools of standing water. The sound of dripping water could intensify as you approach a section where water is actively percolating through the rock from the surface above. Each drop is a miniature hammer blow, slowly shaping the cave over eons. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the mountain drinking. The sheer age of the space continues to impress itself upon you. Every surface you touch, every drop of water you hear, is part of a system that has been evolving for thousands, maybe millions of years. Humans have only been interacting with caves for a tiny fraction of that time, using them for shelter, art, or ritual. Scholarly debate phrase. Historians still argue whether the presence of specific cave formations or the unique atmosphere of large, echoing chambers influenced the spiritual or mythological beliefs of early humans who used these spaces. Was it the sheer awe of the large chambers, the strange sounds, or the presence of unique cave life that inspired stories of underworlds or spirits? As you stand in this expanding darkness, feeling the vastness around you, it's easy to understand how these places could capture the imagination. It's definitely more inspiring than a damp basement. Though some basements are pretty inspiring, usually in a how quickly can I get out of here kind of way. You move slowly forward, your senses straining to gather information from the dark. The air feels heavy with the weight of time and mineral. The sounds whisper secrets of the deep earth. You are no longer just squeezing into the mountain. You are moving within it, navigating spaces shaped by forces far greater than yourself, sharing the darkness with creatures that have never known the sun. The sheep, back outside in the relative safety of the sunlit world, probably have no concept of this alien environment. And honestly, who can blame them? This is a world that requires a certain kind of courage, or perhaps foolishness, to enter. And you, my friend, are already deep inside. You've moved into a space that finally allows you to stand, to turn fully around without scraping your elbows. The echoes are longer now, deeper, suggesting significant distances in the darkness. It's still black, don't get me wrong, the kind of black that feels like it has physical weight, but the feeling of the space has changed dramatically. It's less like being schwimmen, more like being swallowed, which, is marginally better depending on your perspective. And as your eyes, after their heroic, futile attempts to find light, begin to slightly adjust to distinguishing degrees of blackness, perhaps seeing a surface that's marginally less black than the air in front of it, or catching a faint gleam off a wet rock face that's almost certainly just your brain hallucinating, you start to notice shapes, not sharp, defined shapes, but subtle irregularities. Forms that aren't just the rough, angular breaks of fractured rock, but something smoother, more organic looking, like melted wax or frozen water caught mid-drip. These are the cave formations, the speleothems, if you want to get fancy about it. They are the slow, patient artwork of the mountain itself, sculpted over unimaginable timescales by water and rock. And they are, frankly, stunning. Even in near total darkness, you can sense their presence, feel their alien beauty just beyond the reach of your sight. Reach out carefully, and you might touch one. It feels solid, cool, sometimes smooth, sometimes ridged or bumpy. And as you trace its shape, you start to understand how it formed. Water. Water is the artist here, even though you mostly hear it dripping, not sculpting. Imagine water seeping down from the surface, percolating through layers of soil and rock. As it travels, it picks up carbon dioxide, becoming slightly acidic. Then it encounters layers of soluble rock, most commonly limestone, which is largely made of calcium carbonate. The slightly acidic water dissolves tiny amounts of this rock as it passes through. It's like making mineral tea very, very slowly. When this mineral-rich water reaches an air-filled space in the cave, a few things happen. As a drop hangs from the ceiling, exposed to the cave air, it loses some of its carbon dioxide, and some of the water might evaporate. This changes the water's chemistry, making it less able to hold on to the dissolved minerals. So, tiny amounts of calcium carbonate precipitate out. They solidify, leaving behind a microscopic ring of mineral on the ceiling. The drop then falls, but the next drop does the same thing, depositing another tiny ring of mineral right next to or on top of the last one. Drop after drop, century after century, each drop adds its infinitesimally small contribution. And over vast stretches of time, these deposits build up, hanging down from the ceiling like mineral icicles. These, my friend, are stalactites. The name supposedly comes from Greek words meaning to drip, which makes sense. The water that falls from the tip of a stalactite, or just drips directly from the ceiling, still contains some dissolved minerals. When this drop hits the floor below, it also loses carbon dioxide and perhaps evaporates slightly, depositing its remaining mineral load on the ground. Again, drop after drop, a mound of mineral builds up on the floor, rising upwards. These are stalagmites, named from Greek words meaning to drip to, but implying something that has dripped upon, forming from the floor up. Think about that. Every inch of a stalactite or stalagmite represents thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of years of dripping water. A formation just a few feet tall might be hundreds of thousands of years old, or even older. Mainstream historical fact. The growth rate of speleothems is incredibly slow, typically measured in millimeters per century, though rates can vary widely depending on water availability, mineral concentration, and temperature. A centimeter might take 1,000 years to form. This cave, with its formations, is measuring geological time in a way that makes human history look like a blink. Your entire life condensed wouldn't even register as a visible layer on one of these things. Makes your bucket list seem a little less urgent, doesn't it? As you move deeper, using your hands more to feel than see, you might encounter these formations up close. Some might be slender and needle-like, others thick and massive, like stone columns. If a stalactite and a stalagmite grow towards each other and eventually meet, they form a column connecting the ceiling to the floor, like a support pillar sculpted by time and chemistry. The textures vary too. Some formations are smooth, almost polished by the constant flow of water. Others are rough, crystalline, sparkling faintly if your light source, that unreliable internal one, could actually reach them. The colors aren't just white. Depending on other minerals in the rock and water, you might encounter formations stained with reds, oranges, yellows, or browns from iron oxides, or even blues and greens from copper. In the darkness, you might only sense a difference in reflectivity or texture, but if you could shine a light, you'd see a hidden palette of earthy tones. Beyond the classic stalactites and stalagmites, there are other stranger formations. This is where the cave gets really creative. Water flowing across a surface, like a wall or a sloping floor, can deposit minerals in thin sheets, creating flowstone, beautiful undulating curtains or cascades of rock that look like frozen waterfalls. Imagine a geological drapery shop, but everything is made of stone, and you're definitely not allowed to touch anything without potentially damaging millions of years of work. Quirky tidbit time. Sometimes water doesn't just drip straight down. Capillary action, air currents, and slight inclinations in the rock can cause water to move sideways, upwards, or in seemingly impossible directions before dripping or depositing its minerals. This creates bizarre formations called helictites. They twist and turn like spaghetti or gnarled branches, defying gravity, growing in contorted shapes that make absolutely no sense if you only think about straight drips. They are the rebels of the speleothem world, refusing to conform to the simple up and down rules. Finding a cluster of delicate helictites is like discovering a secret, spiky crystal garden that exists just to mess with your understanding of physics. There are also cave pearls, smooth spherical formations that form in shallow pools where water agitation causes mineral layers to build up evenly around a nucleus, like a rock gobstopper. Or draperies, thin, translucent sheets of flowstone that hang like folded curtains. As you navigate past these formations, the air might feel different near them, perhaps cooler due to the surface area for evaporation, or just thick with the palpable sense of immense age. The sounds of dripping water might become louder here, each plink and plonk echoing off the hard mineral surfaces. It's the sound of creation, the soundtrack to the world's slowest art project. You might reach out and feel the slickness of active flowstone, where a thin film of water is still depositing minerals, or the dry, dusty surface of an older formation. Perhaps one where the water source has shifted over time, leaving it dormant. Touching them, even gently, feels like connecting with deep history in a way no museum exhibit can replicate. You are literally feeling time manifest as rock. Just try not to break anything. These formations are incredibly fragile in some cases, and a single careless bump can undo millennia of slow work. Think of it as the ultimate look, don't touch rule. Standing amongst these ancient stone sculptures, the scale of the cave begins to truly sink in. These formations wouldn't exist without the larger space around them, the air-filled chambers that allow the water to interact with the atmosphere. The vastness you sensed in Section 4 is now being populated by the physical evidence of the cave's slow internal life. It makes you think about the sheep back outside. They graze, they bleat, they follow their simple, immediate instincts dictated by the sun and the seasons. They have no concept of this hidden, patient world beneath their hooves. Their lives are fleeting blips compared to the slow, deliberate growth of a single stalagmite. One bleat from a sheep is probably louder than a century of mineral deposition is fast. It's quite the contrast. The geological processes that create these karst landscapes, with their caves and sinkholes and underground rivers, are global phenomena. But the specific details of how a particular cave forms its unique array of speleothems are complex. Scholarly debate phrase. Historians and geologists still argue whether particular environmental conditions or subtle variations in rock composition are more critical factors in determining the type and abundance of formations found in different cave systems. Why does one cave have magnificent draperies while another seemingly similar one is full of delicate helictites? It's not always clear-cut. It's like asking why one artist paints portraits and another sculpts abstract pieces, but on a geological scale and with dripping water as the medium. As you move deeper, the formations might become denser, filling the space, creating a landscape that is both beautiful and slightly disorienting. You might have to weave your way through columns, duck under low-hanging stalactites, or step carefully around delicate helictite gardens. It's like navigating a slow-motion rock and roll fantasy. Everything is dripping, solidifying, and taking weird shapes, just without the loud music or questionable fashion choices. Though a few of these formations are definitely questionable fashion choices for rocks. The darkness continues to press in, but the shapes are now becoming more defined, at least in your mind's eye, built from touch and memory and the faint echoes. You are no longer just in a dark void, you are in a sculpted, textured, ancient environment. An environment shaped by forces that predate not only the shepherds and their sheep, but the very idea of humanity itself. You are a momentary visitor in a realm where time moves at a completely different pace, and you are surrounded by the silent, dripping evidence of that profound geological slowness. The tactile landscape of mineral sculptures fades slightly behind you now, not disappearing entirely, but becoming less of a focus as another sense starts to dominate your experience. Hearing. The sounds of the canyon are evolving. The random, isolated plinks and plonks of individual drips are still there, the constant soundtrack to the slow formation process. But they are joined by new noises. Maybe you hear the fainter, more rhythmic shh of flowing water, distant and muffled, suggesting a stream or pool somewhere deeper within. Perhaps there's a low gurgle closer by, hinting at water making its way through tighter passages or sumps. The echoes themselves seem to have changed quality. They are longer, more complex, bouncing off unseen walls and formations in ways that make it hard to pinpoint the source of a sound. A single drop might now produce a cascade of tiny echoes that seem to come from multiple directions at once, creating a disorienting, almost musical effect. And amidst the water sounds, there might be other things. A faint skittering, brief and quick, that vanishes before you can process it. A soft rustle like something brushing against rock. Or perhaps most unsettlingly an unnerving silence, punctuated only by your own breathing and heartbeat, which suddenly seems incredibly loud in this deep, still space. It's the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but full of unseen things holding their breath. You might also start to feel changes in the air, a slight draft perhaps, cooler and carrying the scent of damp earth and rock. This current suggests an opening somewhere, an airway connecting different parts of the cave system, or maybe even a connection to the surface far away. Air movement in a deep cave is often subtle, driven by temperature differences between different chambers or external air pressure changes. But when you feel it, it's a tangible sign that this isn't a sealed tomb, but a living, breathing geological entity. The combination of these new sounds and subtle air currents begins to build a powerful sense within you. The growing feeling that you are not alone, not necessarily in a someone else is here way, not yet anyway, but that the cave itself is teeming with unseen life, or at least processes that feel alive. The water flows, the air moves, the formations grow, and tiny organisms, perhaps cave-adapted creatures that never see sunlight, might be stirring in the perpetual night. Think about the biodiversity that can exist in caves. While the surface world relies on photosynthesis for its energy, deep cave ecosystems, far from any light, are often built on chemosynthesis or detritus washed in from the surface. They have their own unique food webs. There are blind fish, pale crustaceans, unique insects, spiders, and bats. Lots of bats, sometimes. Though hopefully, if this is a bedtime history cave, they are currently asleep and hanging upside down like slightly creepy, fuzzy fruit. The sounds you hear, the rustles, the skitters, the echoes amplifying small movements, could be signs of these creatures. A bat shifting on its roost, a cave cricket hopping away from your perceived presence, a small, blind salamander navigating a subterranean pool. Your brain, deprived of visual input, becomes hypersensitive to sound, interpreting every little noise, every subtle shift in the air, as a potential indicator of something there. This feeling of a hidden presence is ancient, woven into human history and folklore. Caves have always been liminal spaces, thresholds between the known world and the mysterious underground. They appear in creation myths, stories of monsters, places of spiritual retreat, or locations of hidden treasure. The idea that the deep earth holds secrets, often guarded by non-human entities, is a recurring theme across cultures. Mainstream historical fact. Prehistoric humans used caves not just for shelter, but for ritualistic purposes, creating stunning cave paintings deep within their chambers, far from the entrance. The famous Lascaux cave in France, for example, contains elaborate artwork in areas accessible only by navigating dark, narrow passages. These weren't just easy-to-reach shelters, they were places people ventured into deliberately, perhaps viewing them as sacred or spiritually significant spaces. Why trek deep into a dangerous cave to paint a picture? It suggests there was a profound meaning attached to these dark, echoing environments. The sounds, the drafts, the pervasive darkness, they work together to stimulate your imagination. You might find yourself projecting shapes onto the blackness, interpreting faint noises as footsteps or whispers. It's the psychological effect of sensory deprivation meeting primal fear of the unknown. Your mind tries to fill the void, and it often fills it with potential threats or mysteries. Is that rustle just a few particles of dust falling from the ceiling? Or is it something moving? Is that cold draft just passive air circulation? Or is it the breath of something large, slumbering deeper within? The lack of visual confirmation leaves these questions tantalizingly unanswered, feeding the sense of a hidden, perhaps watchful, presence. Quirky tidbit. Some caves are known for producing unusual, almost musical sounds, sometimes referred to as cave songs or lithophonic effects. These can be caused by specific rock formations that resonate when struck by dripping water, or by air currents whistling through constricted passages, or even by seismic activity resonating through the rock. Imagine standing in the dark and hearing the cave itself humming or singing to you. It's a reminder that the geology is dynamic, creating its own unique acoustic environment. There's a cave in Vietnam where the air currents create a sound like wind chimes, even deep underground. Spooky and atmospheric, a perfect combination for feeling like you've walked into a fantasy novel. This feeling of life in the cave isn't necessarily biological. It can also be the sheer scale and activity of the geological processes. The dripping, the flowing, the dissolving, the depositing. It's a continuous, slow-motion transformation of the earth. The cave is actively making itself, changing and growing millimeter by millimeter over centuries. That slow, persistent activity, when you tune into its sounds and feel its subtle energies, can feel incredibly potent, like a vast, patient creature is simply going about its business, largely indifferent to your brief intrusion. The sounds might guide you, consciously or subconsciously. You might find yourself drawn towards the source of that rhythmic flow, or away from a sudden, sharp noise that startles you. Your ears become your primary navigators in this lightless world. You learn to distinguish between the sharp, nearby plink of a drop and the softer, more diffuse echo from further away. You might even try to use echoes deliberately, clapping your hands or shouting softly, if you're brave enough to break the quiet, listening to how the sound bounces back to gauge the sheen and shape of the space around you. Of course, shouting might also attract unwanted attention, depending on what lurks in the deeper, darker corners. Probably best to stick to quiet listening for now. The silence, when it falls between sounds, is profound. It's a silence that seems to absorb noise, making your own breathing sound amplified and ragged. It's in these moments of intense quiet that the feeling of presence can be strongest, as if the cave itself is listening. You become acutely aware of the pressure of the rock above and around you, the immense weight of the mountain holding this vast, dark space, and you feel small, a tiny, warm, breathing intruder in a cold, ancient world. This sense of being observed, or at least of not being alone, is a powerful part of the cave experience. It taps into deep-seated instincts and fears. It's why tales of underground creatures, from gnomes and goblins to more monstrous entities, are so pervasive. The darkness, the echoes, the unknown spaces, they are fertile ground for the imagination to conjure inhabitants. As you move deeper, guided by sound and feel in that subtle thread of air, the air might grow slightly warmer, perhaps due to the stable year-round temperature of the earth. or maybe slightly cooler if you're nearing a significant water source or draft. These microclimates within the cave contribute to the sense that it's a complex, multifaceted environment, not just a hole in the ground. It has different rooms with different atmospheres, different sounds, different feelings. The shepherd in the story venturing into this cave would have felt this too. Without the scientific knowledge we might possess about speleothems or cave ecology, his interpretation of these sounds and feelings would likely have been filtered through folklore, superstition, and practical experience. A skittering sound might be a rat or a snake. A draft might indicate another exit or a dangerous chasm. The profound silence or strange echoes might be attributed to spirits or other non-mundane forces inhabiting the deep earth. Historians still argue whether early human cave exploration was driven primarily by practical needs like shelter, resources, or safe passage, or if spiritual, ritualistic, or purely exploratory motivations played a more significant role. Did they go deep just because they were looking for something tangible, or because they felt a pull towards the mystery of the underground? The presence of artwork in the deepest, hardest to reach sections certainly leans towards the latter. The sheep, of course, would have none of this internal drama. They would be experiencing the cave purely through immediate physical senses, the damp air, the different footing, the lack of light. Their bleating, if they made any, would have been simple expressions of discomfort or confusion, echoing strangely in the vastness. Their instinct would have been to return to the familiar, sunlit world of grass and sky, away from the deep unknown. Your own instincts might be whispering something similar right now. The growing sense of presence isn't necessarily frightening, though it certainly can be unsettling. It can also be exhilarating. It's the feeling of being connected to something ancient and powerful, something that exists completely outside the norms of your everyday life. It's the mountain's hidden pulse, the earth's slow breath, the quiet activity of a world that doesn't need the sun to exist. You continue to move forward, drawn by the evolving soundscape, feeling the subtle shifts in the air, acutely aware of every tiny noise. The cave is speaking to you, not in words you understand, but in echoes, drips, drafts, and silences. And in doing so, it is creating the distinct, lingering impression that this space is not empty, but occupied. Occupied by geological time, by slow, persistent processes, and perhaps, just perhaps, by things that prefer to remain unseen in the deep, unwavering dark. The sounds continue to guide you, pulling you deeper into the earth. The soft whisper of the draft now feels stronger, perhaps suggesting you're getting closer to wherever that air is coming from, or going. The echoes seem to wrap around you, creating a three-dimensional map of the invisible space, though it's a map that shifts and distorts depending on how the sound waves bounce off unseen surfaces. You might stumble slightly as the floor changes texture, from slick, wet mud to rough, dry rock, or maybe even a patch of fine, powdery dust that puffs up around your feet like spooky, subterranean talcum powder. You know, for the cave's sensitive skin. You reach out a hand, touching the cave wall as you move. It's cool, damp, and textured, sometimes smooth and calcite-coated, sometimes rough volcanic rock, or perhaps layers of ancient sediment that crumble slightly under your fingertips. It feels solid, immense, indifferent. You are just a brief, warm intrusion against millions of years of slow geological process. As you navigate, relying more and more on touch and hearing, you finally encounter something that arrests your movement completely. Something that doesn't fit the pattern of drips, flows, and natural rock formations you've become accustomed to. It's not just another stalactite or a pile of breakdown rock. This is different. Your hand, trailing along the wall for guidance, brushes against a surface that isn't rough or wet or crumbly. It feels unnervingly smooth. You stop, heart giving a little thump, thump, thump against your ribs. What is this? You explore it cautiously with your fingertips in the absolute dark. It feels cool like the surrounding rock, but the texture is utterly foreign to everything else you've touched so far. It's polished, incredibly, impossibly smooth, almost like glass, but solid, unyielding. It seems to be a patch on the wall, perhaps just a foot or two across. You run your hand over it again, confirming the sensation. It's flat too, or subtly curved in a way that feels intentional, not like the haphazard undulations of natural rock surfaces. This smooth area is bordered by the rough, familiar texture of the cave wall. The transition surprisingly sharp, like a line has been drawn between the wild natural world and this. You try to see it, uselessly sweeping your eyes across the blackness. Of course, you see nothing, but your other senses are screaming that something unusual is here. You lean closer, trying to discern if there's a scent, but you smell only damp earth and mineral notes. You listen intently, but there are no new sounds emanating from this strange patch, just the constant drip, drip, drip elsewhere in the cave. Focusing purely on touch now, you explore the boundaries of this smooth area. It's not a sheet of ice, it's definitely rock, or something as hard and cold as rock. The shape begins to emerge under your probing fingers. It's not a simple rectangle or circle. There are edges, corners, maybe even slight indentations or raised areas within the smooth surface. It feels worked, altered, like something has been done to the rock here. Could it be a natural geological anomaly? Sometimes water flow over specific mineral deposits can create polished surfaces, like riverbeds. But this doesn't feel like the water-worn smoothing you might find near a stream. It feels different, almost too perfect, too distinct from its surroundings. And the shape, it seems to have a pattern, a non-random arrangement of lines and curves. You spend a long moment just feeling the surface, trying to decipher its form in the darkness. Is that a straight line? Does it turn at a right angle? Is that a gentle curve, like part of a circle or an arc? Your fingers trace the shapes tentatively. It's frustrating not to be able to see, relying entirely on the information your fingertips send to your brain. But as you explore, a possibility begins to form, tentative at first, then growing stronger. The lines, the curves, the distinct boundaries. It feels like carving, like engraving. Someone or something has worked this rock. It feels like a symbol, or perhaps part of a larger image, etched into the cave wall. The smoothness itself is a clue. Natural cave surfaces are typically rough, uneven, covered in mineral deposits, or worn smooth by water in specific flow paths. This widespread polished area, especially if it contains distinct shapes, speaks of deliberate action. Abrasion, polishing, maybe even a chemical treatment if that were possible with ancient technologies. Spoiler, probably not, but let you think about it for a second. More likely, painstaking physical work with tools. Imagine trying to do this in absolute darkness, relying only on touch. It would require immense patience, skill, and a powerful reason to undertake such a difficult task. Who would do this, and why? This discovery immediately changes the nature of your exploration. You are no longer just exploring a natural geological formation. You are exploring a place that shows signs of having been visited and modified by someone or something else. This anomaly is the first concrete evidence that the cave holds more than just mineral wonders and echoing sounds. It hints at a history that isn't just geological, but perhaps also historical or even something else. You continue tracing the edges of the smooth area. It seems to be part of a larger design that extends beyond the patch your hand initially found. You carefully move along the wall, fingers outstretched, following the smooth texture wherever it leads, mapping out the shape in your mind. It's slow-going, tedious work in the dark. You have to remember where you are, how the lines connect, what kind of pattern is emerging. Is it geometric, figurative, is it a single large symbol or part of a sequence? The possibilities are tantalizing. Your archaeologist brain, or just your curious human brain, is buzzing. This is like finding a fragment of an inscription or a piece of a carving in a buried ruin. It's a direct link to whoever was here before. Mainstream historical fact. Evidence of early human activity deep within caves, far from entrances, is found in many parts of the world, not just Europe. Aboriginal Australians, for instance, use deep rock shelters and caves for ritualistic purposes and rock art. Often in remote and challenging locations, these sites weren't casual hangouts. They were places of deep cultural and spiritual significance, suggesting a complex relationship with the underground world that went far beyond simple shelter. This reinforces the idea that people were willing to venture into and significantly alter dark and difficult cave environments for reasons we are still trying to fully understand. The sheer effort involved in polishing or carving rock in a deep, dark cave environment is staggering. Think about it. You'd need tools, light, even if just flickering torches, and a lot of time. This wasn't a quick graffiti tag on the entrance wall. This was a deliberate, significant undertaking. Deep in the earth where air might be stale and the way out feels impossibly far. Whoever did this was committed. As you continue tracing, you start to get a better sense of the overall design. It's abstract, not a picture of an animal or a person like many prehistoric cave paintings. It seems to be composed of interconnected lines and shapes, angles, curves, perhaps something like a spiral or a knot. It's intricate, not crude. The lines are precise, the surface is carefully smoothed within the design's boundaries. You might spend an hour or more just trying to map this out with your hands. It's mentally exhausting, trying to build a visual representation in your head based solely on touch. You might retrace parts of it multiple times, trying to ensure you haven't missed a connection or misinterpreted a shape. It feels like reading Braille on a massive ancient scale. What could these symbols mean? Are they symbols? Are they writing? A map? A warning? A record of something that happened here? Given the context of the story, the shepherds entering, the sheep returning alone, this discovery feels incredibly significant. Could this carving be related to their fate? Could it explain what happened? This isn't just a random artistic expression. The location, deep within the cave, far from the entrance, suggests importance. The effort involved suggests importance. The strange, non-standard nature of the carving, it doesn't feel like typical prehistoric petroglyphs you might see photos of, for instance. The smoothness is the primary alien feature. Suggests importance. It feels intentional and perhaps just a little bit alien. Maybe it's not human work at all. The thought flickers at the edge of your mind, quickly dismissed by your rational brain. But the feeling lingers. This feels different from anything you've encountered in a cave before. Quirky tidbit. Some researchers have theorized that certain geometric symbols found in deep prehistoric caves might represent entoptic phenomena, the visual experiences generated within the eye or brain itself, such as patterns seen during altered states of consciousness, like those induced by sensory deprivation, flickering lights, or certain plants. If true, it would suggest some of the deepest cave art was linked to shamanistic practices or spiritual journeys, where the cave itself was seen as a portal to another realm. So those squiggly lines and dots might literally be visions made manifest on the rock. Trippy, right? And kind of fits the vibe of finding weird symbols in the deep dark. You try to imagine the shepherds encountering this. Would they have touched it? Tried to understand it? Or would they have been terrified by something so strange and out of place in the natural cave? Their world was one where unusual phenomena were often attributed to supernatural forces, spirits of the earth, or creatures of folklore. This smooth, carved rock in the deep dark would likely have seemed deeply mysterious, perhaps even sacred or dangerous. Historians still argue whether the geometric markings found alongside figurative art in many prehistoric caves served a symbolic, narrative, mnemonic, memory aid, or purely aesthetic function. Were they part of a complex language or belief system? Were they specific markers or messages? Or were they just cool patterns? The debate highlights how little we still understand about the cognitive world of our distant ancestors, especially when their expressions are so far removed from our own forms of communication. You pull your hand away from the smooth carving for a moment, letting the rough cave wall reground you. The silence feels heavier now, punctuated only by the drips and your own breathing. The sense of presence is no longer just a general feeling of the cave being alive. It feels more focused, more directed, as if the carver, long gone, is still here in the work they left behind. You wonder about the tools they used. Hard stone tools? Perhaps something metallic, if they possessed such technology, though that seems unlikely for ancient cave explorers. The precision suggests careful, repeated abrasion. Maybe they used water and sand, or ground harder rock against the surface. Whatever the method, it would have been painstaking and time-consuming. A labor of dedication. Why here? Why this spot? Is there something unique about this particular section of the cave? You run your hands over the surrounding rock again, trying to feel for any other anomalies, but it all feels like standard cave wall. Just this one area bearing this strange, smooth, carved mark. The discovery ignites a new urgency in you. This isn't just a historical exploration anymore. It's a mystery, a puzzle. This carving is a clue. You need to understand it. You need to see it. The frustration of the darkness is suddenly immense. If only you had light. Even a dim, flickering torch would be enough to get a visual sense of the entire pattern. You resist the urge to call out, to break the silence with a request for light that you know won't be answered. You are alone in this experience, guided only by your remaining senses and your intellect. You have to process this new information, this profound anomaly within the confines of the dark. What if the shepherds found this? What would they have thought? Did they touch it? Did they try to decipher it? Or did this carving, this strange mark in the deep earth, somehow trigger whatever happened to them? This smooth, carved section feels cold under your touch, but it sparks a warmth of excitement and trepidation within you. You've found something significant, something that connects you directly to the mystery of the cave, and potentially to the fate of those who entered before you. It's a first tangible sign that this cave holds secrets beyond its natural formation. And as you stand there, hand resting on the strange carving in the dark, you feel the weight of those secrets pressing in on you from the vast of silent spaces around. You are now deeply, irrevocably involved. You linger by the smooth, carved section of the wall, your fingers still tracing the strange, abstract patterns. The initial shock of discovery has faded slightly, replaced by an intense curiosity and a burning desire to understand what you found. It feels ancient, deeply embedded in the rock, not just geologically, but historically, maybe even mythologically. What does this mark mean? Your mind races through possibilities. Is it a form of writing like a proto-alphabet or a system of ideograms? Could it be a map, perhaps, of the cave itself or the area outside? Is it a religious symbol, a marker for a sacred spot, a warning, an instruction, or something else entirely, something beyond our modern understanding of communication or purpose? Without light, interpretation is incredibly difficult. You can only feel the outlines, the polished surfaces, the sharp transitions from smooth to rough. You try to imagine the patterns visually, piecing together the fragments your fingertips have mapped. It's frustratingly abstract. No familiar shapes, no readily identifiable images. Just lines, angles, curves, organized in a deliberate, non-random way. It feels complex, not simple, like a sentence written in a language you don't know or a circuit diagram without the key. You think about the shepherds again. Did they see this? Or did they only feel it in the dark, just like you are now? If they found it, what would their interpretation have been? People in their time often saw the world through a lens of folklore, superstition, and religious belief. A strange carving deep in a dark cave might not have been seen as archaeology waiting to be deciphered, but as the work of spirits, giants, or other supernatural entities. Maybe this was a boundary marker, indicating a place that shouldn't be entered, or a spot where offerings should be left. Perhaps it was a record of a past event, a story etched into stone. Though without figurative elements, what story could it tell? A story of geometry, a story of effort, a story of encounter. You try to recall any local legends or folklore associated with this particular cave, or caves in the region in general. Sometimes the old stories hold kernels of truth, exaggerated and transformed over centuries, but rooted in real events or locations. Were there tales of strange markings, of people disappearing underground, of encounters with beings from below? Many cultures have myths about the underground world, realms of the dead, homes of spirits, dwelling places of creatures both benevolent and malevolent. Caves often feature prominently in these stories, seen as entrances to these other worlds. A carving like this in such a deep and remote location could easily be interpreted through that lens. It might be seen as a gate's inscription, a key to unlock or a lock to prevent access, a sign left by the dwellers of the deep. Thinking about folklore makes you consider the possibility that the shepherds weren't just lost or trapped by a cave-in. What if the cave itself, or something within it, was the agent of their disappearance? And what if this carving is connected to that? The air feels colder now, or perhaps it's just your imagination, heightened by the strangeness of your discovery. You still hear the constant, maddening drip, 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 the faint whisper of the draft, the echoes of your own movements. But now those familiar sounds seem laced with something new, something more attentive. It's not a distinct sound, but a feeling of awareness. You have the distinct and uncomfortable sensation that you are no longer alone in experiencing this carving. It feels as though your discovery has alerted something, some subtle presence that was perhaps dormant or simply indifferent until now. It's not necessarily hostile, at least not yet, but it feels watchful, like uncovering a secret that someone or something didn't necessarily want you to find, or is at least very interested in what you do with it. This feeling isn't just born from the darkness or the isolation. You've been in dark, isolated places before. This is different. It's the combination of the deep, absolute dark, the profound silence broken only by natural cave sounds, the immense age and scale of the place. And now, this undeniable evidence of a history far stranger than mere geology. It's the history written on the wall, and the feeling that the author or someone connected to them might still be around. You pause your tracing of the carving, lifting your hand slowly. You stand still, holding your breath, trying to listen beyond the obvious. Is that fainter echo just the cave settling? Or is it something moving stealthily in the distance? Is that subtle change in the draft just a natural fluctuation? Or is something displacing the air currents? Your rational mind tries to dismiss these feelings as the product of stress, sensory deprivation, and an overactive imagination fueled by the mystery. Of course you feel watched. You're deep underground, alone, having just found something utterly inexplicable and potentially tied to a historical disappearance. It's a perfect recipe for paranoia. Your brain is hardwired to look for patterns and threats, and this environment is providing plenty of ambiguous data points for it to work with. But the feeling persists. It's a prickling sensation on the back of your neck, a heightened state of alertness you can't switch off. You feel vulnerable, exposed, even though you are enveloped by tons of rock. You are acutely aware of the space around you, the vast, unseen chambers stretching out in every direction, potentially holding what? Could this carving be a trap? A trigger? A sign that marks the territory of something dangerous? The sheep returned, but the shepherds didn't. Whatever happened here was selective. It took the humans, but left the animals. That detail has always been the most chilling part of the original account. It wasn't a simple rock fall or a methane pocket that killed indiscriminately. It was something that targeted the shepherds specifically. Perhaps the carving is related to that selective force. Maybe it's a symbol of it or a way to interact with it. Maybe the shepherds, in their innocent exploration, somehow activated something connected to this symbol. Did they touch it? Did they try to decipher it? Did they perform some action near it, perhaps unknowingly breaking a rule or violating a boundary marked by this inscription? You run your hand over the carving again, more tentative this time. It's just cold rock, albeit unnaturally smooth. It feels inert, passive. But does it react to touch? Is there a subtle energy you can't perceive? This is starting to sound like a bad horror movie plot, you chide yourself. Stay grounded. This is history, mystery, maybe a bit of geology, but probably not active supernatural forces. Probably. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient cultures across the globe, from the Maya to the inhabitants of the Orkney Islands, built elaborate structures and left significant artifacts deep underground or inside natural cave systems. These spaces were often used for ceremonies, burials, storage of sacred objects, or as refuges, indicating a widespread human impulse to interact with the subterranean world in profound ways beyond just seeking basic shelter. The dedication and effort involved in creating these deep earth sites mirror the effort implied by the carving you found. suggesting a similar level of cultural or spiritual importance might be attached to this cave. The sheer scale of ancient underground construction is mind-boggling. Imagine the workers chipping away with stone tools in near-total darkness, relying on torchlight and their sense of direction to create vast chambers and tunnels. It puts the effort required for this smooth carving into perspective. This wasn't just a bored shepherd scratching a doodle. This was significant work, demanding skill to aim in a clear purpose. What was that purpose? And why has it seemingly been forgotten by time, leaving only this silent, cryptic mark? Your sense of being watched intensifies. It's not just a feeling anymore. It's almost a physical pressure, a weight in the air around you. You feel the hairs on your arms stand up. It's not cold, not exactly. It's something else, like static electricity, but heavy, expectant. You turn your head slowly, straining to hear over the blood rushing in your ears. Nothing, just the familiar sounds, yet they seem sharper, more distinct, as if heard through a sudden silence that felt just milliseconds ago. You feel a childish urge to call out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" But you suppress it. What if something answers? Or worse, what if something was trying to be silent, and your call reveals your exact location? You move away from the carving, stepping carefully back into the rough, natural darkness. You keep a hand outstretched, touching the wall for guidance, but your other senses are on high alert, focused on the unseen space around you. Every drip, every rustle of your clothes, every slight shift in the air current feels amplified, potentially a clue. Could the watching be merely the cave itself, a non-conscious but aware entity? That sounds even crazier than spirits. But deep caves have a way of making you think about forces beyond the purely physical. They are systems, living in a geological sense, breathing with air currents, constantly changing environments that dwarf human existence. Perhaps the presence is just the immense, ancient, indifferent awareness of the rock itself, finally registering your intrusion. Quirky tidbit. There's a phenomenon known as the overview effect, described by astronauts who see the Earth from space. A sense of awe and interconnectedness. Perhaps deep caving produces a sort of underview effect, where the overwhelming scale and primal nature of the underground world trigger profound, sometimes unsettling, psychological responses, including feelings of not being alone or perceiving non-existent sensory input. Maybe that's all this feeling is. Your brain trying to make sense of an environment it's not built for. Or maybe not. Who's to say? Definitely not you alone in the dark. You pause, trying to regulate your breathing. You tell yourself you are safe. You entered a known cave system, albeit perhaps not fully explored. You haven't encountered any physical dangers yet. The feeling of being watched is just a feeling, but the feeling is incredibly strong. It presses in from all sides. Is there a pattern to the sounds now? Do the drips seem to follow a rhythm? Does the draft shift in unnatural ways, as if something is moving through it? You strain your ears, trying to pick out any anomaly from the background noise of the cave. It's hard to be objective when your nerves are jangling like wind chimes in a hurricane. Historians still argue whether folklore and mythology should be considered valid sources of historical information or merely cultural narratives. Can the study of legends and myths about a place offer genuine insights into past events or beliefs associated with it, even if the stories are fantastical? Or are they simply products of imagination, irrelevant to factual historical reconstruction? When you're standing in a dark cave that swallows people, listening to the silence and touching strange carvings, it's hard not to wonder if the old stories might just contain more truth than dismissive scholarship sometimes allows. You consider going back to the carving, touching it again, but something holds you back. The feeling of being watched seems centered around that spot, or perhaps your interaction with it triggered the feeling. Moving away feels safer, like retreating from the edge of something unknown and potentially dangerous. You want to understand it, desperately, but the instinct for self-preservation is kicking in. You are faced with a choice, made more difficult by the absolute darkness. Do you try to map more of the carving by feel, risking further interaction with whatever is causing this unsettling presence? Or do you prioritize finding your way deeper, hoping to find answers elsewhere, perhaps even a source of light or a way out, and leaving the carving behind for now? The thought of leaving it is frustrating. It feels like the key, the first real clue you've found to explain what happened here. But the palpable sense of unease is hard to ignore. It feels like stepping into a room and immediately sensing you've interrupted something or that you're not supposed to be there. You decide for now to continue moving forward deeper into the cave. You can always try to find the carving again later. You reason that the feeling of being watched might dissipate as you move away, or perhaps you might find something else that clarifies its meaning, or even find the source of the disturbance. It feels like a tactical retreat, a way to gather more information before committing further to deciphering the cryptic message on the wall. You take a slow, deliberate step forward, away from where you believe the carving to be. Your hand finds the rough cave wall again, a familiar anchor in the dark. The sounds of the cave surround you once more. The omnipresent drip, the breathy draft. The feeling of being watched doesn't vanish instantly, but it seems to lose some of its intensity as you put distance between yourself and the strange polished surface. It lingers, though, a low hum of awareness in the periphery of your senses. You haven't escaped it entirely. You've just moved slightly out of its direct focus, if that's what it was. The darkness remains absolute, the way forward unknown. But now you carry the knowledge of the carving with you, a heavy secret shared only with the silent cave and the unseen presence that seems to reside here. The journey is no longer just about exploring a cave. It's about uncovering a deliberate message left by someone long gone and navigating the unsettling feeling that the messenger, or their legacy, might still be listening. You move forward into the deeper dark, the image of abstract lines and unnatural smoothness burned into your mind's eye, guiding you or perhaps luring you deeper into the heart of the mystery. The air still feels thick, somehow, even as you step further from where you touch the strange smooth stone. That prickling sensation on your skin hasn't entirely faded. It's like a faint echo of the moment you first felt it, a low-level hum beneath the surface of your consciousness. You try to shake it off, telling yourself it was just the adrenaline of the discovery, the stress of the dark, maybe even a weird draft causing goosebumps. But the feeling sticks, a quiet, unsettling companion as you move deeper into the cave's embrace. It's not the same as the general unease that comes with being lost underground in total darkness. That's a primal fear, rooted in vulnerability and the unknown. This feels different. It feels specific. It feels like being known. Like something is aware of your presence, tracking your movements, perhaps even anticipating your thoughts. It's the kind of feeling you get when you walk into a room you thought was empty, only to realize someone was sitting silently in a corner, watching you the whole time. Except here the room is miles of rock, and the watcher is everything and nothing all at once. Your other senses seem sharper, but also unreliable. You listen intently to the sounds of the cave. The drip, 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 the whisper of the draft. Your own breathing, which you try to keep shallow and quiet. Are there other sounds, faint scuffs, a distant echo that isn't your own? Your brain, deprived of visual input, is working overtime, trying to construct a coherent picture of your surroundings based on auditory and tactile information. And the presence seems to be messing with the signal. Is that sound real? Or is your mind fabricating it, filling the silence with imagined threats? This is where things get tricky psychologically. When you're under immense stress, especially in unfamiliar and challenging environments, your perception can become distorted. Your brain, desperate for clues, can interpret ambiguous stimuli in potentially alarming ways. That rustle you heard? Probably just a small rock shifting, or even the fabric of your clothes. But in the grip of this feeling, it sounds like a deliberate step, a slow drag across the cave floor, just out of earshot. You try a little experiment. You stop completely, holding your breath. Absolute silence descends, broken only by the distant, persistent dripping. You wait, counting slowly in your head. Nothing, just the deep, ancient quiet. You let out your breath slowly, and the silence rushes back in, heavier now. Was the feeling of being watched stronger when you were moving, or when you were near the carving? Does stillness lessen its intensity, or just make you a harder target to track? These aren't rational questions, but they're the ones swirling in your head. Maybe it's just the cave itself. Caves, especially large, ancient ones, have a certain presence about them. They are vast, silent, unmoving entities that have existed for millennia. You are a fleeting visitor, a tiny blip in their geological timeline. Perhaps the feeling is simply the overwhelming, indifferent awareness of the cave's immense scale and age pressing down on your consciousness. It's not hostile, just aware. Like a mountain knows a fly is buzzing on its surface. Not an active watchfulness, but a passive, crushing reality of scale. You're not just in a dark place. You're inside something colossal, something that predates human history by orders of magnitude, something that will remain long after you're gone. That can feel like a presence, and let's be honest, caves can be legitimately creepy places even with lights on. They are associated with darkness, the unknown, things hidden away. Think about how many horror movies are set in caves. There's a reason for that. Our subconscious is wired to see deep, dark holes as places of potential danger. Add in the real historical mystery of the vanished shepherds, and you've got a perfect recipe for your brain to start manufacturing spooky sensations. It's probably just psychology, right? Just your own anxieties externalized by the extreme environment. Definitely, almost certainly, hopefully, you keep your hand on the wall as you move. Finding the texture helps ground you. It's rough limestone, cool and damp. You listen to your footsteps, soft scuffs on the rocky floor. You try to focus on the physical reality of your situation. You are in a cave, moving forward, trying to find a way out or find more information. The feeling of being watched? That's just background noise, static on the line. You tell yourself this, but it doesn't make the feeling go away. It's like trying to ignore an itch you can't scratch, or a catchy song you can't get out of your head. Except this song is playing in your nervous system. Mainstream historical fact. Throughout history, caves have been used not just as shelters, but as sacred spaces. Paleolithic peoples painted incredible art on cave walls, often deep within the cave systems, suggesting these were places of ritual and significance, not just living areas. Later cultures used caves for burials, initiation rites, and oracles. The famous oracle at Delphi, for example, was linked to a chasm in the earth. This widespread human tendency to imbue caves with spiritual or mystical importance reinforces the idea that these places can feel different, special, or even alive in a non-literal sense. Places where the veil between worlds might feel thinner, where ancient energies or histories might linger. It's not just you feeling this way in a cave. It's something humans have felt for tens of thousands of years. So maybe the feeling isn't a physical presence watching you, but an energetic one, like a residue left behind by whatever happened here, or the cumulative energy of millennia of geological processes somehow detectable by a finely tuned, or perhaps overly tuned, human nervous system. It's easy to dismiss that as pseudoscientific mumbo-jumbo, but when you're alone in absolute darkness, touching rocks that are millions of years old and feeling distinctly unseen yet observed, your mind tends to entertain possibilities that would sound ridiculous in daylight. You remember the shepherds? Did they feel this? Was it a gradual creeping dread or a sudden, overwhelming awareness that they were not alone? Perhaps the carving wasn't just a marker, but something that amplified this presence, or made it actively interact with those who found it. Maybe touching it was a bad idea. Too late now. The thought sends a fresh wave of anxiety through you. What if the feeling isn't passive awareness, but active attention? What if whatever happened to the shepherds was triggered by their presence within this zone, a zone perhaps defined or marked by the carving? And what if your presence and your interaction with the carving has reactivated it? You take another step, and then another. Your pace is slow, deliberate. You're hyper-aware of the sound of your own movements, trying to minimize them, trying to move silently. It feels absurd. Who or what are you trying not to alert? The rocks? The feeling? The ghost of a shepherd? It's like trying to sneak past your own shadow. This heightened state of alert is exhausting. Your muscles are tense. Your breathing is shallow again. Your heart is thumping, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. You need to find something, a clue, a way out, anything to break this mental loop and regain some control over your perception. This feeling of being watched, this sense of a lingering human awareness, is far more unnerving than simple fear of the dark. It's the uncanny valley of consciousness, something that feels almost alive, but in a fundamentally alien way. Quirky tidbit. Some researchers studying cave systems and other deep underground structures have reported experiencing unusual phenomena that are hard to explain purely geologically or psychologically. These range from strange acoustic effects and localized temperature fluctuations to persistent feelings of unease or perceiving faint, unidentifiable sense. While often attributed to factors like air currents, subtle vibrations, or psychological stress, the sheer consistency of some reports across different locations and individuals leads some to wonder if there are other, poorly understood environmental factors at play in deep subterranean spaces that can impact human perception in strange ways. Maybe you're just experiencing one of those poorly understood environmental factors. Sounds way better than something spooky is watching you, doesn't it? You reach out your hand again, not just for guidance on the wall, but feeling the air in front of you, as if expecting to encounter some invisible barrier or texture change. Nothing, just empty space, cold and still. Yet, the feeling persists, a quiet hum, a low-frequency vibration in your bones. This sensation isn't just auditory or visual, obviously in the dark. It feels multi-sensory. It's a tactile sensation on your skin, a pressure in your chest, an instinctual wrongness that bypasses rational thought and screams danger at a very primitive level. It's the part of your brain that tells you to run when a predator is near, even if you can't see or hear it. It's ancient programming, finely tuned over evolutionary history, and right now that programming is firing on all cylinders. Historians and archaeologists often face the challenge of interpreting spaces that were clearly significant to past peoples, but for which no written records or clear explanations exist. What was the function of Göbekli Tepe? What was the purpose of the Nazca Lines? How were certain megalithic structures used? Historians still argue whether the interpretation of archaeological sites should rely solely on physical evidence, or if incorporating anthropological insights into ritual, belief systems, and the human experience of sacred or liminal spaces can provide a more complete, albeit speculative, understanding. Could understanding ancient beliefs about caves, the underground, or even specific types of symbols help interpret what this carving meant and why being near it might feel this way? Or is that just wishful thinking, imposing modern or generalized ideas onto a unique, lost context? You navigate carefully, your footfalls on the uneven floor. You are moving slightly downhill now, the air feeling a little warmer, maybe a bit more humid. The sounds seem to echo differently in this new passage, suggesting a change in the shape or size of the tunnel. You stop for a moment listening. The omnipresent drip, drip, drip seems louder here, closer. And beneath it, is that a different sound? A very faint rhythmic whisper? Or is it just your blood rushing in your ears, your imagination playing tricks? The feeling of presence is still there, a dull ache behind your eyes, a tension in your shoulders. It's not just near the carving, it seems to have followed you. Or perhaps it wasn't tied to the carving at all, but to your intrusion into this deeper part of the cave. The carving was just the first undeniable sign that this place was more than natural, and your interaction with it somehow alerted something. You take a deep breath, trying to steady yourself. You need to maintain focus. Panicking will only make things worse. You are exploring a cave, a very dark, very old cave with a strange history and a very strange carving. The feeling of being watched is just that, a feeling. A strong, persistent, deeply unsettling feeling that seems to wrap around you like the darkness itself, but a feeling nonetheless. Probably. You take another step forward, your hands sliding along the cool, rough wall. The passage seems to narrow slightly. The air is still. The only sounds are the drip, 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 and your own quiet movements. The feeling of being watched doesn't intensify, but it doesn't fade either. It's just there. A constant reminder that you are not alone in this ancient, silent, waiting darkness. And whatever happened to the shepherds, whatever force took them but left their sheep, might still be residing in these depths, paying very close attention to the new visitor who just touched its mark on the wall. You push the thought away. Focus on the feel of the wall, the sound of the drips, the direction of the slope. Focus on moving forward. Because going back towards that carving, in the epicenter of that feeling, feels like the absolute wrong thing to do right now. The only way is deeper, into the unknown, hoping that understanding lies ahead, not behind you in that unnerving, unseen presence. You continue moving forward, the passage subtly shifting around you. It feels narrower now, pressing in a little more closely on either side, forcing you to keep your hands closer to your body. The slope is more pronounced too, a definite downward angle that requires you to watch your footing even more carefully on the uneven floor. The air changes are becoming more noticeable as you descend. It's warmer now, perhaps a little wetter, the humidity clinging to your skin and making each breath feel just a touch heavier. It smells different too, less like damp earth and cold rock, more like something enclosed, ancient, perhaps a hint of minerals or even something organic, long since decayed. It's not a pleasant smell, but it's not exactly foul either, just different, and it adds another layer to the strangeness of this deeper level. The feeling of being watched is still there, of course. It didn't fade when you moved away from the carving. If anything, it feels less localized, more diffuse, as if the entire space is now aware of you. And the acoustics here are certainly not helping your state of mind. The gentle, rhythmic drip, drip, drip that was a constant companion earlier is still present, but it seems to echo in odd ways. Sometimes a drip sounds loud and close, only for the next one to be strangely muted. Your own footsteps, soft as they are, seem to hang in the air for too long, their echoes swirling and shifting, making it hard to tell if you just heard your own movement or something else entirely. It's like the cave itself is playing with sound, distorting it, making it impossible to get a clear fix on anything using your ears alone. This is where the cave really starts to earn its labyrinthine reputation, not just in a spooky sense, but in a genuinely disorienting, oh dear, where did I come from? Sense. The passage you're following starts to branch. Not just simple forks, but multiple smaller openings leading off in different directions. Some low and requiring a crawl, others seeming to drop away sharply. You try to keep track, thinking about leaving markers, maybe breaking off small pieces of rock, or tying knots in a piece of string if you had one. You don't, obviously. But the darkness makes even this simple task impossible. You have no way to see if a marker is still there, or if you're just circling back on yourself. It feels like every turn you take, every choice of path, immediately wipes the memory of the path you just left, leaving you with no spatial reference points. It's the ultimate anti-GPS environment. You're not just lost in the dark, you're lost in a three-dimensional maze that seems determined to confuse you at a fundamental level. Up feels like down, left feels like right. You try pressing against the wall you were following, but after a few turns, that wall might have changed which side of you it's on, or it might have disappeared completely as you entered a larger chamber, or passed a side passage you didn't even register. It's like trying to navigate in a fog bank made of solid rock. Your internal compass, usually so reliable, starts to spin wildly, leaving you feeling adrift and increasingly anxious. The strange acoustics add to this disorientation. You might hear that faint, rhythmic whisper sound again, or maybe just your blood rushing, remember? But now it seems to come from ahead, then behind, then to your left without you having moved. Is it an actual sound source? Perhaps a draft moving through tight cracks making a whistling noise? Or is it the peculiar resonant properties of the cave passage carrying and distorting sounds in ways that your brain isn't equipped to process? Or is it something else? The unsettling feeling of being watched seems to be amplified in these acoustically active zones, as if the presence is somehow using the cave's soundscape to communicate its awareness of you, or just to mess with your head, which frankly is working. You pause, trying to find your bearings. You hold your breath again, straining to hear anything beyond the drip, drip, drip. Silence, heavy, absolute, ancient silence. Then a sudden sharp crack breaks the quiet, seemingly right next to you. You jump, heart leaping into your throat. You whip your head around, uselessly in the dark, listening intently. Nothing. Just the silence reasserting itself, slightly mocking, as if the cave just decided to play a little prank on you. You let out a shaky breath, probably just a rock shifting under pressure. Caves do that. They expand, they contract, things settle. Completely normal geological activity. Absolutely, definitely, your rational mind clings to these explanations like a lifeline in the dark. Quirky tidbit. Speaking of rocks shifting and caves making noise, there's a lesser-known field of study sometimes called geoacoustics, which looks at the natural sounds produced by the Earth's crust, including microseismic activity, the groaning of glaciers, or even the subtle sounds of rock under immense pressure deep underground. Some proponents of more speculative theories have even wondered if certain ancient sites built over geologically active areas might have been chosen or designed, intentionally or unintentionally, to harness or interact with these subtle earth sounds. It's a fringe idea, but it makes you wonder if the strange acoustics you're hearing are just geology being weird, or if there's something else going on that's tapping into the tea's natural voice. Maybe this cave is just exceptionally talkative. A bit rude, though, playing loud noises in the dark like that. Needs to learn some manners. You force yourself to move again, choosing a path that seems to continue the general downward trend. You try to pay attention to the feeling of the air. Is it getting warmer, colder, more humid, drier? These subtle clues are the only navigation tools you have, aside from the direction of the slope. But even these cues seem inconsistent. One passage might feel damp and warm, while an adjacent one is surprisingly cool and dry, suggesting different airflows or dead ends. This inconsistency makes building a mental map almost impossible. You feel like you're wandering blind through a space designed by a mischievous, hyper-dimensional architect who hates straight lines and common sense. The increasing labyrinthine nature of the cave also isolates you. The sounds of the outside world are long gone. The echoes of the upper cave are fading. Here, in the deeper passages, you are alone with the strange acoustics, the shifting air, and the persistent feeling of being watched. It's a profound sense of isolation, not just from other people, but from the familiar, predictable physics of the surface world. Everything feels fluid, uncertain, potentially misleading. You have no idea how far you've come, how deep you are, or how much further there is to go. Every choice of passage is a gamble, a step further into the unknown with no guarantee of finding a way through or even a way back. This kind of environment can play serious tricks on your mind. Deprivation of light, sound distortions, physical disorientation. It's a recipe for sensory confusion and heightened suggestibility. That feeling of being watched, is it getting stronger because there's something actually there? Or because your stressed out brain is manufacturing explanations for the weirdness, projecting a conscious presence onto the confusing environment? Your mind desperately craves pattern and meaning, and in the absence of clear information, it will create them, often drawing on primal fears. Caves in the deep underground are ancient symbols of the subconscious, of the hidden, the buried, the unknown. It makes sense that your mind would go to some interesting places down here. Maybe it's just your own shadow, but in a cave, a particularly clingy shadow. Mainstream historical fact. Humans have explored caves for millennia, facing exactly these challenges of navigation and disorientation. Early cavers and explorers often relied on simple methods like leaving trails of stones, marks on the walls, or even using spools of thread, like Theseus in the Minotaur's labyrinth, though that's a myth, the concept is sound, to find their way back out. Without such techniques, getting lost was incredibly easy, leading to tragedy. Many cave systems have parts that remain unexplored precisely because the difficulty of navigation in their complex, multi-level structures without modern equipment is prohibitive. The fact that the shepherds and their sheep were found outside this deep cave system, with the sheep having apparently navigated their way out alone, while the people vanished inside, is particularly baffling in the context of how difficult cave navigation is, especially in a complex, labyrinthine structure like this. Feels like it's becoming. How did the sheep manage it? And why couldn't the shepherds? It's a cruel punchline to a very unfunny mystery. As you move deeper, you notice other subtle changes. The rock formations themselves seem different. The smooth work stone of the carving was clearly artificial, but even the natural rock here seems less regular, more jagged, more uneven. Some sections feel slick and wet, others oddly dry and dusty. You reach out to touch a wall and your fingers slide into a patch of thick, clay-like mud that wasn't there a moment ago. You pull your hand back, wiping it on your leg. Another great idea in the dark. Now you just have muddy knees and can't see. Where did that mud come from? Is there a hidden water source nearby? Or is it just pockets of trapped sediment? The air quality also feels like it's fluctuating. At times it feels fresh, almost crisp, despite the warmth and humidity. At others it feels stagnant, heavy, like you're breathing in stale air that's been trapped for centuries. This could be due to air currents moving through different passages, some providing ventilation and others being dead ends. Or it could be something more localized. Could there be gases accumulating in certain areas? Carbon dioxide, perhaps? Or other heavier than air gases that settle in depressions? That would explain the feeling of heavy air and could be genuinely dangerous. Suddenly, that weird smell feels less like mineral and more like a warning sign. You hold your breath for a moment, trying to detect any distinct odor. Rotten eggs, hydrogen sulfide, or that metallic tang of carbon monoxide? Nothing obvious, just that persistent, enclosed smell. This fluctuating environment, the shifting acoustics, the changing air, the disorienting layout, feels less like a natural cave and more like a dynamic, perhaps even intentional space. Historians still argue whether seemingly natural features within ancient sites, particularly those used for ritual or spiritual purposes, were sometimes subtly modified or selected specifically for their environmental properties, their acoustics, their airflow, their visual appearance, though you can't see that right now. Was this cave just naturally weird, or was it perhaps enhanced in some way either by human hands or hooves, or by whatever presence seems to inhabit it, to create a disorienting, psychologically impactful environment? Is the labyrinthine quality a natural geological feature? Or were passages deliberately blocked or opened to create this confusing maze? It's a chilling thought that you might be lost, not just due to nature, but due to design. You keep moving, relying entirely on your sense of touch and the uncertain gradient of the slope. The feeling of being watched is no longer just a prickle, it's a weight, a pressure that feels like it's pressing down from above and from all sides. It's not malicious exactly, but it's utterly indifferent. Like you're an ant crawling across a giant's hand, and the giant is simply observing your struggle with detached curiosity. The cave feels less like an empty space and more like a best complex organism, and you are a tiny foreign body attempting to navigate its intricate internal structure. And the organism is aware of the foreign body. Another junction. This time it feels like three distinct passages branching off. You stop, trying to listen, trying to feel the air currents. The acoustics are particularly strange here. The drip, drip, drip seems to come from all directions at once, a confusing chorus of water droplets. You extend a hand into each opening, trying to gauge the temperature, the humidity, the gradient. They all feel subtly different, but there's no clear signal. Which way leads forward? Which way leads deeper? Which way leads to a dead end, trapping you? And which way might lead back towards that carving, back towards the source of the unsettling presence? You instinctively shy away from that direction, even if you can't identify it precisely. The only way is forward, deeper into the maze. You choose a passage that feels slightly cooler, reasoning, perhaps foolishly, that cooler air might indicate a larger passage or better ventilation, and thus a higher chance of it leading somewhere. As you step into it, the acoustics shift again. The general echo lessens, but localized sounds seem sharper, clearer. You take a few steps, listening intently, and then you hear it, distinctly. It's not a drip, it's not a rock shift, It's a sound that feels biological. A soft, rhythmic shuffling, like something is being dragged slowly across rough stone, not far ahead. Your blood runs cold. You freeze, every nerve ending, screaming. The feeling of being watched is no longer a passive awareness. It feels closer. And the labyrinthine passage ahead is no longer just confusing. It feels like a trap. Your heart is hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. Every instinct screams at you to turn and bolt, to scramble back the way you came, to escape the source of that sound. But you can't. The maze-like nature of the passages has already made retreat feel impossible, a guarantee of getting truly, utterly lost. And there's also that morbid, irresistible curiosity that has propelled you this far. What is that sound? Is it animal, human, neither? The rhythmic shuffling continues just ahead, maybe only 50 feet away in the pitch black. It's slow, deliberate, heavy, like something large is being dragged across the rough floor. You force yourself to take a step forward, then another. Each movement is agonizingly slow, your ears straining, trying to pinpoint the exact location of the sound. The air in this passage feels different again, perhaps slightly cooler, despite the general warmth of the deeper cave. There's also a faint, almost metallic smell now, mixed with the enclosed earthy odor. It's not the smell of decay, not exactly. More like damp iron, or maybe something coppery. It's hard to tell in the dark, with your nose already overloaded by the cave's baseline smells. The shuffling sound seems to be coming from around a bend up ahead. You reach out a hand, feeling the cave wall beside you. It's rougher here, less smooth in some of the upper sections, but not as jagged as the patch of rock you felt earlier. It feels damp in places, cool to the touch. You move cautiously, your hand sliding along the rock face, using it as a guide. The sound is definitely getting louder now, clearer. It's less of a drag and more of a heavy scrape, pause, scrape, pause. It feels like something large and heavy, with multiple points of contact is moving slowly forward, or maybe away from you. The passage begins to widen slightly as you approach the bend. The acoustics shift again. The general echo dampens further, but the scraping sound becomes incredibly sharp and distinct, seeming to fill the immediate space around you. It's unnerving how clear it is, almost as if you were standing right next to it, even though it's still just ahead. You can almost visualize it, something heavy, dragging across the gritty floor. What could be in this part of the cave making a sound like that? Not a sheep, surely. Sheep don't generally shuffle like that. And the sheer scale of the sound suggests something substantial. You reach the bend and slowly edge your head around it. Darkness. Still absolute, impenetrable darkness. Your eyes are utterly useless here. You have to rely entirely on sound and that vague, persistent feeling of being watched. The scraping is right there now. It feels like it's just meters away, perhaps in a larger chamber just past the bend. Or maybe the passage opens up slightly here. You hold your breath listening. Scrape, pause. Scrape, pause. It's maddeningly regular, like some kind of infernal clockwork mechanism made of bone and rock. The feeling of presence is overwhelming now. It's no longer just a vague awareness. It feels focused on you, like whatever is making that sound knows you are here, knows you are listening, knows you are standing frozen just around the corner. It's not aggressive, not yet, but it is intensely attentive. It feels ancient, patient, and utterly alien. It's the feeling you might get standing in a primeval forest and realizing you're being watched by something that has been there since before your species learned to stand upright. A shiver runs down your spine, completely unrelated to the temperature of the cave. You take another step, forcing yourself forward. You need to know, you have to know what is making that sound. It's a terrible, dangerous impulse, but it's stronger than the fear, at least for this moment. As you step fully around the bend, the sound seems to momentarily stop. Silence. The scraping is gone. Just the eternal quiet drip, drip in the distance, and the pounding of your own blood in your ears. And the feeling of being watched is now so intense, It feels like a physical weight pressing down on you. What happened? Did it hear you? Did it stop? Or did it just finish whatever it was doing? You stand there, paralyzed, listening desperately into the void ahead. Nothing. The metallic smell seems stronger now, though, maybe mingled with something else. Something earthy, but not like the wet earth of the upper cave. More like disturbed earth? Freshly turned soil? But that makes no sense. You're deep underground, in solid rock. Where would disturbed earth come from? Quirky tidbit. This mix of smells you're encountering, metallic, earthy, enclosed, is something cave explorers sometimes report, and scientists have found that the unique microbial life in certain deep cave systems can produce a surprising array of volatile organic compounds, creating odors that are distinctly different from surface environments. Some of these compounds are related to mineral processes, others to metabolic byproducts of chemosynthetic bacteria that don't rely on sunlight. So the smell might just be deep cave biology doing its thing, completely unrelated to whatever is making the scraping sound. Or maybe the thing making the sound is somehow interacting with the cave's unique ecosystem, stirring up these ancient, strange odors. Fun options, right? It's like a scratch and sniff sticker from the Cretaceous period. You force yourself to move again, taking another slow, deliberate step. Silence. You take another. Still silence. You venture forward, perhaps 10 more steps, arms outstretched, pointlessly in the dark. Remember? Feeling for obstacles. The passage here has opened up slightly. It feels less like a narrow tunnel and more like a small chamber, maybe just 20 feet across. The floor feels rougher here, more uneven. Your foot scuffs against something loose on the ground. You instinctively pause, feeling around with your foot. It feels like pebbles, but large ones, or small chunks of rock. The disturbed earth idea resurfaces. What could break up the solid rock floor like this? And then the scraping sound starts again. But this time it's different. It's not just ahead anymore. It seems to be coming from your left, then your right, then slightly behind you. It's faster now too, less deliberate, more erratic. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Pause. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It's circling you. The feeling of being watched intensifies, but now it feels like you are the center of its attention, and it is moving around you unseen in the darkness of this small chamber. Panic claws at your throat. You want to scream, to run, to lash out at the darkness, but you freeze, rooted to the spot, listening to the sounds circle you. It's not just one sound source now. It feels like multiple points of scraping, moving independently, but coordinating their movement. It's like something with multiple limbs or appendages is scuttling around you in the blackness. Scrape, scrape to your left, then scrape, scrape, scrape to your right. A faint, heavy thump from behind you. Then the scraping sound resumes directly ahead, slightly further away, as if whatever it is has completed its circuit and is now facing you again, just beyond the reach of your imagination. Mainstream historical fact. Historically, encounters with the unknown in dark, confined spaces often led to vivid reports of strange creatures or presences, particularly in folklore and in early exploration accounts. These experiences were likely amplified by sensory deprivation, fear, and the human tendency to anthropomorphize or attribute intent to unexplained phenomena. Cave systems specifically feature prominently in myths about underworld beings, hidden monsters, or spirits guarding secret places. While modern science explains many cave phenomena through geology, biology, and psychology, the experience of encountering something inexplicable in the dark is a very real part of human history and folklore, shaping legends for millennia. It's easy to see how a genuinely strange sound or feeling in a cave like this could spawn tales of monsters or spirits. The scraping sound stops again. The sudden silence is almost worse than the noise. It feels pregnant with expectation, like whatever is out there is waiting, waiting for you to move, waiting for you to make a sound, waiting for something. The air feels heavy, charged. The metallic smell is stronger than ever. And that subtle, earthy odor, it feels wrong. Not like just dirt, more like something dug up. You stand there for what feels like an eternity, every nerve ending screaming. Your mind races, trying to find a rational explanation. A draft? No, drafts whistle or hum, they don't scrape. Falling rocks? Maybe, but the rhythm was too deliberate, too active. Animals? What kind of animal would make that sound, moving like that in absolute darkness, miles underground? Bats? Too small, too light. Cave bears? They exist, but they hibernate and wouldn't likely be actively scraping around like this. Insects? Some large cave insects exist, but the sound feels too heavy, too significant. Historians still argue whether ancient accounts of encounters with non-human entities in caves or underground spaces were purely mythological. Exaggerated reports of known animals, like bears or large cats, descriptions of human hermits or outlaws living in seclusion, or perhaps even distorted memories of something genuinely unusual or unexplained. Without concrete evidence, it's impossible to say. But standing here, listening to that sound circling you in the pitch black, it's very easy to understand how the idea of something monstrous or non-human lurking in the depths could take root. Your rational brain is desperately clinging to bear, but the sound and the feeling are whispering something else. You can't stay frozen forever. The silence is unbearable. You have to do something. Move forward? Try to find a wall to orient yourself? Call out. Calling out seems like a spectacularly bad idea, given that whatever is out there is clearly aware of you and seems to prefer the darkness and silence. It feels like calling out would be like ringing the dinner bell. Probably best to keep the voice quiet. You decide to cautiously try and feel your way around the edges of this small chamber, hoping to find a continuation of the passage, or perhaps identify what might have caused the floor to be disturbed. You take a step to your left, slowly extending your foot, feeling the ground. It's still loose here, gritty. You shuffle your foot forward, testing the terrain, and then your foot connects with something solid. Not rock. It feels different, smooth in places, but with a strange, rough texture in others. It's also cold, very cold. You cautiously lower your hand, feeling along the ground until your fingers touch it. It feels organic, rounded yet uneven and large. As you feel along it, your fingers brush against something harder, sharper. It feels like a bone, a very large bone. Your blood runs cold again. Is this the source of the scraping? Is something picking through bones on the cave floor? But why? And what kind of creature leaves bones this large? As your hand shakes, you try to feel the shape of the object more clearly. It feels curved, like a rib cage, but massive. And as you trace further along the ground, your fingers brush against more of them, multiple large, smooth, cold objects scattered across the disturbed floor of this chamber. The scraping sound erupts again, much closer this time, seemingly from just beyond the edge of this cluster of bones. It's faster, more agitated. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Pause off, scrape. It feels like whatever it is now alerted to your discovery, and it's not happy. The feeling of being watched is no longer detached observation. It's narrowed, focused, and feels territorial. Like you have intruded upon something private. You scramble back instinctively, pulling your hand away from the cold, strange objects on the ground. Your foot slips on the loose grit, and you stumble, catching yourself against a rock formation. The scraping sound stops abruptly. Silence descends again, thick and heavy. You stand there breathing hard, trying to process what you felt. Bones, large bones, and something that makes a scraping sound and circles in the dark, disturb the ground here and seems to be associated with them. The reality check hits hard. You are deep underground, in absolute darkness, possibly miles from the surface, in a confusing maze-like cave system. You are completely alone, except for whatever is making those sounds and leaving behind huge bones. The shepherds and their sheep vanished here. The sheep somehow found their way back out. The people didn't. Was this what they encountered? Did they stumble into this chamber, disturbing whatever inhabits it? The thought is terrifying. The casual way you felt those objects, the sudden silence, the renewed scraping, it feels less like an animal and more like an intelligence, an ancient, powerful intelligence that lives in the dark and has a very peculiar diet, or perhaps a very peculiar collection. You need to move. Now, but which way? The sound is gone, the silence is absolute, and the darkness presses in, hiding whatever is waiting just beyond your senses. You scramble back from the spot where you touch those impossibly large, cold bones, your heart trying to stage a solo escape act through your ribcage. Your hand feels raw, not from injury, but from the sheer alienness of the texture you encountered. The scraping sound is gone again, leaving that heavy, charged silence in its wake. You're breathing hard, trying to quiet the sound of your own ragged gasps, convinced that whatever is out there can hear every shaky inhale. The darkness feels different now. Not just absence of light, but a tangible presence within it. It's like the air itself is coiled, ready to strike. You strain your ears, trying to pick up any sound over the drumming in your head. Nothing. Just a distant, monotonous drip, 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 like the universe is slowly bleeding out somewhere far away. And that metallic, earthy smell is stronger than ever, mingling with something else now. Something faintly sweet, but sickly. Not the scent of life, but of something that was alive long ago and is now part of the cycle of this deep, strange place. Where did the sound go? Where is it? You stand frozen, trying to use that instinctual awareness that served humans well for millennia. The one that tells you when you're being watched by a predator. But it's useless here. The feeling of being observed is overwhelming, coming from everywhere at once, yet nowhere you can pinpoint. It's like the cave itself is watching you, and whatever is in it is merely the cave's eyes. You can't stay here, surrounded by the bones and the suffocating silence. You have to move. But in which direction? Going back feels wrong, a guaranteed path to getting lost completely. Moving forward into the unknown is terrifying, but perhaps less terrifying than staying put, waiting for the unseen thing to make its move. You remember the passage had widened here into a small chamber. Was there an exit on the other side? Taking a slow, agonizing breath, you take one tentative step away from where you felt the bones. Your foot scuffs on the loose grit again. You flinch, expecting the scraping sound to erupt. Nothing. Silence. You take another step, trying to tread as lightly as possible. The ground is still uneven, still feels like disturbed earth. This confirms it wasn't just a few scattered bones. Something has been actively working here, churning up the floor. As you shuffle forward, your foot encounters something else. Not bones this time. It feels smooth, almost like polished stone, but also segmented. You crouch down slowly, feeling around with your hands. It's cold, hard, and feels like sections joined together. You run your fingers along its length. It curves. It's too regular to be a natural rock formation. It feels artificial, or maybe organic, but structured in a way you don't understand. It's long and segmented like a giant insect leg. No, that's your imagination running wild, fueled by fear and the knowledge that sheep disappeared here. The scraping sound begins again, but this time, it's not circling you. It's coming from directly in front of you, maybe only 15 feet away. It's still the heavy scrape, pause, but it sounds different. Less like something being dragged, more like something heavy moving. And with it, there's a new sound, a low, guttural clicking, like stones being slowly ground together. Click, scrape, click. You freeze, your hand still hovering over the strange, segmented object on the ground. The clicking sound seems to be coming from the same source as the scraping. It's rhythmic, deliberate, and it feels impossibly close. The air feels colder now, a specific, localized chill that seems to emanate from the sound source. The strange smells intensify, metallic, earthy, sickly sweet, and now something else. Something sharp, acrid, like ozone or stagnant water mixed with decay. Your mind is screaming at you to run, but your body is locked in place, a terrified statue carved from bone and pure adrenaline. You are going to see it. You are going to finally understand what lives here in the deep dark. What makes these sounds? What leaves these massive bones? What took the shepherds and left the sheep? It's right there, just ahead, making that slow, grinding click and scrape. Mainstream historical fact. Throughout history, encounters with subterranean spaces, especially extensive cave systems, have been interpreted through local folklore and beliefs, often involving spirits, dwarves, or large, unknown creatures dwelling beneath the earth. These stories frequently serve to explain strange geological phenomena, echoes, or sounds emanating from the ground, and sometimes even the disappearance of people or livestock. The earth monster, or underworld dweller, is a widespread archetype across many cultures, demonstrating a universal human fascination with and fear of what lies beneath our feet. These aren't just silly fairy tales, they represent our historical attempts to make sense of a hidden, often dangerous part of our world using the only tools we had: stories. The scraping and clicking stop. Absolute silence again. But this time, the silence is different. It feels expectant. Not like it's waiting for you to move, but like it is about to move. The feeling of being watched is pinpointed now, focused entirely on you from the darkness directly ahead. You can practically feel the weight of its unseen gaze. And then, a soft, wet sound, like something large and heavy shifting on a damp surface. Slurp, drag, click. Closer. It's closer and it sounds organic, horribly organic. The air currents shift faintly and you feel a puff of air, cold and carrying those potent, awful smells wash over your face. It's breathing, whatever it is, it's breathing, and its breath smells like the grave. You can't stand it anymore. You take a step back, then another slowly, carefully. The ground beneath your feet is still loose and gritty, the remnants of whatever the creature has been doing here. As you retreat, you hear the soft sounds begin again, following you. Slurp, drag, click. It's moving towards you, slowly, deliberately, like it knows you're trying to escape and is simply escorting you, or hurting you. Quirky tidbit. Deep cave systems, especially those isolated from the surface, often develop unique and sometimes bizarre ecosystems. Organisms here often rely on chemosynthesis, deriving energy from chemical reactions, not sunlight, and have adapted extreme sensory abilities to navigate in total darkness, such as enhanced hearing, chemoreception, smell, taste, and touch. Some cave creatures are depigmented, or pale, eyeless, and possess elongated limbs or antennae. It's a world that functions entirely differently from the surface, and encountering life forms adapted to this environment could be truly alien and unexpected. So while your brain is probably still stuck on bear, or maybe really big bat, the reality could be far, far stranger based on what science knows about deep cave biology. Or maybe not. But the possibility is there. You keep backing away, your heart thumping a desperate rhythm against your ribs. The sounds continue to follow, maintaining the same unnerving distance. Slurp, drag, click. It's like a parody of movement, heavy and ponderous, yet undeniably purposeful. You reach behind you, trying to feel for the wall of the passage, hoping to find your way back to something familiar. Something that isn't this horrifying presence in the dark. Your hand touches rough rock. The wall, relief floods you for a second, a fleeting thought of following the wall back the way you came. And then you hear a new sound, a high-pitched, piercing squeal. It echoes terrifyingly in the confined space, not human, not animal you recognize. It's a sound of pain or terror, or maybe something else entirely, and it seems to come from just beyond the thing that is following you. The scraping and clicking stop abruptly. Silence returns, but it's shattered by the echoes of that awful squeal. What was that? Another creature? A captive? Your mind is a whirlwind of terrified possibilities. The brief moment of relief at finding the wall is gone, replaced by a new wave of panic. The squeal fades, leaving only the silence and the heavy, watchful presence just ahead in the dark. Historians still argue whether ancient sites showing evidence of ritual, sacrifice in caves were solely human on human or human on animal acts, or if some myths about monstrous entities demanding tribute or preying on people might have a basis in encounters with dangerous megafauna or unique, terrifying creatures that once inhabited such places before becoming extinct or retreating further into inaccessible depths. It's a dark intersection of folklore, archaeology, and paleozoology, where it's hard to separate legend from any potential, terrifying reality. Standing here listening to that squeal and feeling the presence, it's hard not to lean towards the more monstrous interpretation. The silence after the squeal stretches, thick with tension. You wait, listening, your muscles screaming from the strain of holding yourself rigid. Then slowly, deliberately, the scraping and clicking sounds resume. Slurp, drag, click. It's still there, still moving, still between you and whatever made that terrible sound. It dawns on you with sickening clarity. The bones, the scraping, the disturbed earth, the squeal. This creature, it's hunting, or perhaps processing. And the sound you heard wasn't just a squeal, it sounded like a sheep, a single sheep, brought down here into the dark to become part of whatever cycle operates in this place. This is why the shepherds didn't return. And this is how the sheep did. The sheep were separated. Some were taken, some were left behind. And the ones that were left, terrified and perhaps guided by some instinct or sheer blind luck, found their way back out. But the shepherds, trying to protect their flock, or perhaps trapped when the creature made its move, were less fortunate. You are standing in the creature's lair, the place where it brings its kills, where it feeds or collects, or whatever terrifying activity resulted in those huge bones in the disturbed earth. And you just stumbled right into the middle of it. The slow, deliberate sounds of its movement are coming closer again. It's not just following you anymore. It feels like it's actively approaching. You can't retreat along the wall, not while it's between you and that path. You can't go forward. That's where the sounds are coming from. That's where the moans are. You are trapped in the darkness with a massive, unseen entity that grinds and scrapes and feeds on sheep and shepherds, and maybe whatever else is unlucky enough to wander into its domain. You need to find another way out, fast. But in the absolute black, with your senses screaming, every direction feels equally perilous, equally likely to bring you face to face or limb to leg with the source of the sounds, the keeper of the bones, the creature in the heart of the black cave. You have felt the chill wind blow through the desert air, seen the sand swirl around crumbling stones, maybe even imagine the distant bleating of sheep echoing across the millennia. The old kingdom feels like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? The pyramids standing sentinel over a golden age, then the slow, painful fragmentation of the intermediate period, a time of chaos and competing powers, like a bad corporate merger that just wouldn't resolve so. But history, bless its dramatic heart, always finds a way to turn the page. And turn it does, emphatically, with the arrival of the new kingdom. This is Egypt back on its feet, flexing its muscles, ready to conquer and build it certainly does. You stand now, perhaps metaphorically, before the vast, awe-inspiring complexes of Karnak or Luxor, perhaps imagining yourself wandering through the hypostyle hall, those towering papyrus bundle columns reaching toward the sky, adorned with hieroglyphs that shimmer faintly in the perpetual twilight of the vast space. The air here is thick with the scent of dust and ancient prayers, a million voices whispering across time. This is the era of the great pharaohs, the warrior kings who pushed Egypt's borders far beyond the Nile Valley, creating an empire that stretched from the Euphrates in the north to the Fourth Cataract in the south. And among the most formidable of these rulers, Thutmose III. They called him the Napoleon of Egypt much later, and honestly, the comparison isn't entirely unfair, though Napoleon would probably have appreciated the lack of frostbite. Thutmose III was a military genius, campaigning year after year, expanding his empire, securing trade routes, and bringing back vast wealth to Egypt. But he wasn't just a soldier. He was also a devout patron of the eye and a prolific builder. You walk through these temples, built on a scale that makes modern structures feel like Legos. and you can't help but feel dwarfed, humbled. Every wall, every column, every doorway is covered in inscriptions. Scenes of pharaohs smiting enemies, offering sacrifices to the walls, lists of conquered lands, hymns, rituals, historical records. The Egyptians carved their history, their beliefs, their very understanding of the cosmos into stone, creating a library that has outlasted papyrus and even solid-state drives. You trace a finger along a carved line, feeling the texture of the ancient chisel work, imagining the sculptor bent over this wall thousands of years ago, painstakingly removing tiny flakes of stone, guided by charcoal sketches. What stories are hidden within these carvings? What echoes of the past, even the strange, localized past of a peculiar cave and its unlucky shepherds, might be found here? Thutmose III's building program was immense. He added significantly to Karnak, building jubilee halls, pylons, and obelisks. He erected temples at various sites throughout Egypt and Nubia, solidifying his rule and honoring the gods who he believed granted him victory. Imagine the sheer logistics of it, quarrying millions of tons of stone from distant sites, transporting them, often over vast distances, sometimes using boats on the Nile, sometimes somehow moving colossal statues over land with ropes and sheer human power. Seriously, how did they do that? I need a tutorial. Then the armies of skilled craftsmen, masons, sculptors, painters, turning raw stone into breathtaking, meaningful architecture. It was a monumental undertaking, powered by organization, belief, and probably a lot of strong coffee. Okay, maybe not coffee, but you get the idea. Within this vast tapestry of stone and ink, you search. You look for anomalies, for stories that don't quite fit the standard narrative of kingly triumph and divine blessing. The Egyptians were meticulous record keepers, but their history wasn't quite our history. It was intertwined with myth, with ritual, with a worldview where the divine and the mundane were inseparable. A historical event might be described in terms of cosmic struggle or divine intervention. So you don't expect to find a clean, clinical account. On such and such a day, 12 shepherds entered a cave near X and were subsequently digested. That's just not how they rolled. Instead, you look for symbolic language, for cautionary tales, for references to places or events that seem out of the ordinary. Could the story of the cave and its inhabitants have survived in folklore, passed down through generations, perhaps becoming distorted or allegorized? And if so, could fragments of that folklore have made their way into the formal records or religious texts carved into these temple walls? It's a bit like searching for a specific grain of sand on a beach, but fueled by the tantalizing possibility that the grain might be made of gold. Consider the nature of the curse associated with the cave, if that's what it truly was. Such localized, potentially malevolent forces were very much a part of the ancient Egyptian worldview. They had spells and rituals to ward off evil spirits, dangerous demons, and unlucky places. Could an account of a place known for inexplicable disappearances or unfortunate events be recorded not as a historical footnote, but as a justification for a particular ritual, a warning against entering a certain region, or even incorporated into the mythology of a specific deity associated with liminal spaces or the underworld? Perhaps you find an inscription in a less frequented part of a temple, maybe near a storage room or a side chamber dedicated to a minor god. It describes a specific offering to placate spirits in a desolate region, mentioning a place known for its greedy maw or its hunger for souls. It might be couched in highly symbolic language, referring to the victims not as shepherds, but as wanderers, those who strayed, or sacrifices to the earth's embrace. It wouldn't be a direct chronicle, but a ritualistic acknowledgement of a dangerous place, a reminder to the priests in the community to perform certain rites to maintain cosmic balance and personal safety. Think of it as an ancient version of a hazard ahead sign, but written in poetry and covered in images of protective deities. Or maybe the echo appears in a different form entirely. Thutmose III, in his vast building projects, often recorded tribute lists from conquered lands. These lists weren't just gold, silver, and valuable commodities. They also included more unusual items, exotic animals, strange plants, perhaps even artifacts or objects believed to have magical properties or significance. Could a reference appear here to an object seized from a conquered region, perhaps near the area of the cave? An object described as possessing terrible power or linked to a place where the earth swallowed men? It's a long shot, of course, but you're looking for subtle hints, faint signals in the noise of empire building and divine worship. Another angle is through the funerary texts. The New Kingdom is the era of the Book of the Dead, complex spells and instructions to navigate the afterlife. These texts are filled with potential dangers the deceased might encounter. Treacherous paths, monstrous guardians, pitfalls and snares laid by malevolent forces. Could a particular spell or warning within these texts be inspired by real-world dangers? Even local ones, perhaps including a reference to a place or entity that traps and consumes the unwary? A spell to protect against being consumed by the hidden one or trapped in the stone belly could just possibly trace its origins back to a cautionary tale about a specific, dangerous location like the cave. Historians still argue whether some of the geographic references in the Book of the Dead relate to actual places on Earth or are purely symbolic representations of the afterlife landscape. This ambiguity leaves open the possibility that a real dangerous place, one known through folklore, might have been incorporated into the symbolic geography of the netherworld. Imagine you find a small, damaged ostracon, a pottery shard used for writing, from a workman's village, maybe Deir el Medina, where the tomb builders lived. It's not a formal inscription, but a personal note, a fragment of a letter, or even a doodle with a caption. It mentions a worker who was supposed to go to a certain area to quarry stone or gather supplies, but refused because of a story his grandfather told him about a place where the ground eats you. This kind of anecdotal evidence, if it survived, would be gold, a glimpse into the popular beliefs and fears of ordinary Egyptians, unfiltered by the formal, often propagandistic, narratives of the temples. It might be scribbled hastily, the hieroglyphs rough and uneven, maybe a little food stain on the edge, like someone ate lunch while writing it. You spend hours, days even, scanning these ancient texts, your eyes blurring from the effort, the faint scent of dust tickling your nose. You look at cartouches, hymns to Amun, battle descriptions, offering lists, astronomical ceilings. It feels overwhelming, like trying to find a specific thread in a tapestry the size of a football field. But the hope, the faint possibility, keeps you going. Could the story of the cave, seemingly so localized and specific, have resonated enough to leave a mark, however small or distorted, on the grand narrative of New Kingdom Egypt, on the imperishable stone record left by rulers like Thutmose III? The quest isn't for a direct hit, perhaps, but for an echo, a whisper across the millennia, a sign that the strange events near that desolate cave weren't entirely forgotten by the land and its people, even as empires rose and fell. You've lingered among the stones of the New Kingdom, felt the weight of its power and piety carved into Karnak and Luxor, searched for whispers of forgotten fears in the records of pharaohs like Thutmose III. But even empires as grand as that one eventually dim. The New Kingdom, for all its glory, slowly fractured, giving way to the Third Intermediate Period, a time of fragmentation, competing dynasties, and political instability. Think of it as the corporate merger, really falling apart, with multiple CEOs all claiming they're in charge while the company stock plummets. Then came foreign rulers, Libyans, Kushites from Nubia, Persians, each leaving their mark, sometimes heavy-handed, sometimes surprisingly respectful of Egyptian traditions. Finally, the Greeks arrived with Alexander the Great, ushering in the Ptolemaic era, and ultimately, the Romans rolled in, turning Egypt into their personal breadbasket. Through all these centuries of change, invasion, and adaptation, the rhythm of life along the Nile continued, though the music changed tempo and incorporated new instruments. The Grand Temple complexes might have seen new additions in foreign styles, or perhaps fallen into slow disrepair in neglected areas. The language evolved, hieroglyphs becoming the domain of priests and monuments, while Demotic script became the everyday hand for administration and storytelling, eventually giving way to Coptic. Belief shifted too, blending with foreign ideas, yet stubbornly holding on to core Egyptian concepts of the afterlife, magic, and the presence of powerful unseen forces. And within this long, complex twilight of ancient Egyptian independence, you wonder, did the story of the cave, that localized horror, truly vanish? Or did it perhaps adapt? Folklore is a resilient thing. It mutates, it travels, it gets retold with new details, new villains, new lessons. A tale of unlucky shepherds consumed by the earth might become a cautionary story about disrespecting spirits of the land, a myth associated with a minor, forgotten deity, or even morph into a ghost story told around a fire in the desert night. Imagine the Bedouin guides centuries later, warning travelers away from a certain wadi, not with an accurate historical account, but with a terrifying legend of a place where people just disappear. You might find yourself examining papyri written not in the formal, monumental hieroglyphs of the New Kingdom, but in the flowing cursive strokes of Demotic. This script was used for everything from legal contracts and administrative documents to literary tales and magical spells. Demotic literature includes adventure stories, wisdom texts, and even animal fables. Could a cautionary tale about a dangerous place, a place of no return, have been included in such a collection? Perhaps as a short, chilling narrative, like an ancient creepypasta, warning listeners about specific geographic dangers. It might not name shepherds explicitly, but describe those who wandered too close, or the unlucky ones who sought shelter in a certain cursed locale. The language would be more vernacular, more direct than the flowery inscriptions of the temples. Or perhaps you look through magical papyri from the Greco-Roman period. This era saw a fascinating blend of Egyptian, Greek, and later Jewish and Christian magical traditions. These texts are filled with spells for protection, curses against enemies, love charms, and instructions for communicating with spirits. They also contain lists of dangerous demons, malevolent entities, and places to avoid. Could a reference appear here, perhaps a protective spell against being swallowed by the earth demon, or trapped in the stone belly of the wadi that draws on the folklore of the cave? It wouldn't be a historical account, but a practical application of belief. If a dangerous place exists, you need a spell to ward off its power. You picture a Roman merchant, newly arrived in Egypt, nervously buying a protective amulet from a local priestess, muttering about strange stories he's heard about certain desolate regions where bad things happen. Just a bit of local superstition, he'd tell himself, but maybe he'd keep that amulet close anyway. Consider the Third Intermediate Period, a time of relative decentralization. Local priests and rulers gained more autonomy. This could have allowed localized folklore, like the cave story, to flourish and perhaps even be incorporated into the traditions of specific temples or regions without needing approval from a distant pharaoh. A priestly commentary on an older religious text might include an explanatory note referencing a local legend, interpreting an obscure passage about the underworld as a symbolic representation of a known, dangerous place on earth. Imagine a priest writing a note in the margin of a sacred scroll, linking a description of a demon of the earth to the local story of the cave. A fringe tidbit perhaps, but exactly the kind of place such a story might hide. Then there are the accounts of foreign visitors. Herodotus, the Greek historian, visited Egypt in the 5th century BC and recorded many fascinating, though sometimes questionable, details about Egyptian customs and history. Diodorus Siculus and others followed suit in later periods. These writers often relied on local guides and interpreters who might have shared colorful, perhaps embellished stories. Could a Greek traveler asking about the local geography or strange phenomena have been told a version of the cave story? It might have been misinterpreted, perhaps turned into a tale about a monster or a vengeful god or a place haunted by spirits. Herodotus, for instance, reported on flying snakes and giant ants that dug for gold. A cave that eats people wouldn't be entirely out of character for the kinds of stories he picked up. Historians still argue whether Herodotus genuinely misunderstood Egyptian tales or whether his informants deliberately spun yarns for him. This debate is exactly where a twisted version of the cave story could potentially fit in. A local legend, perhaps exaggerated or misunderstood, making its way into a foreign historical account. Think about the Roman period. Egypt was a major Roman province, a source of grain and exotic goods. Roman officials, soldiers, and tourists flooded into the country. They were fascinated by ancient Egypt, its temples, its mummies, its strange gods. They also brought their own beliefs and superstitions. Did they encounter local tales of dangerous places? Perhaps. A Roman garrison stationed near the desert edge might have heard warnings from local Egyptians about venturing into certain wadis. Maybe a soldier bored on patrol recorded the story in a letter home, describing a bizarre local belief about a cave that swallows anyone who enters, a tale he dismisses as superstitious nonsense, but which gives him a slight chill nonetheless. You can almost see the wax tablet, the hastily scratched Latin, mixed with a few mangled Egyptian place names, recounting the weirdest thing he's heard since arriving in this strange land. As Coptic Christianity spread throughout Egypt, many ancient pagan beliefs and stories didn't just disappear, they were often reinterpreted or incorporated into the new religious framework. A dangerous place formerly associated with a pagan deity or earth spirit might become a place haunted by demons, or a site where a saint performed a miracle to ward off evil. Could the story of the cave have survived as a local legend within a Coptic community? Perhaps about a place where a desert father battled a demonic entity, or a warning for monks not to stray too far into the wilderness? It's a plausible path for the survival of such a tale, filtered through a new religious lens. You imagine searching through monastery libraries, poring over Coptic manuscripts, looking for any mention of unusual geographic features or cautionary tales. Most would be theological texts, lives of saints, or biblical translations. But sometimes, tucked away in a collection of homilies or a travelogue, you might find a brief reference to a dangerous location known locally as the mouth of the earth, or the place where men are lost, a remnant of an older pagan fear repurposed into a Christian warning against venturing into temptation or the domain of demons. It wouldn't be about sheep returning alone, maybe, but the core element of a place that consumes people might persist. This transformation is common in folklore as societies and religions change. A vampire legend might originate in an ancient fear of the dead, evolving over centuries. The cave story could have evolved too. Even later, under Islamic rule, elements of ancient Egyptian folklore could have persisted in local traditions and stories, perhaps influencing the vast collection of tales known as the 1001 Nights, or becoming part of the local lore passed down through families in specific regions. While the formal records of pharaonic Egypt faded from common knowledge, the stories connected to the land itself, its dangers, its strange places, its ancient, unseen inhabitants, might have lingered in the collective memory. The exact details might be lost, the context forgotten, but the core idea, beware the place where the ground opens and takes you, might endure. It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it? That a story originating perhaps in the prehistoric past or the early dynastic period, a story of a unique, terrible event witnessed by simple shepherds, could somehow echo through millennia of history, surviving the rise and fall of empires, the shift of languages, the change of gods. It wouldn't be a clear, unbroken chain, but a series of faint signals, distorted reflections in different cultural mirrors. A mention in a demotic papyrus, a warning in a magical spell, a note in a priestly commentary, a report by a foreign traveler, a cautionary tale told by a Coptic monk, a local legend recounted by a Bedouin elder centuries later. Each one a potential waypoint for the story, a sign that the cave, or at least the idea of the cave, refused to be entirely forgotten. The search for these echoes feels less like archaeology and more like trying to find a particular star in a sky filled with billions, knowing that star might have dimmed significantly over time. You scan texts that deal with geography, with local customs, with warnings about the wilderness. You look for phrases that sound metaphorical, but might have a literal, forgotten origin. The earth is hungry. Do not enter the place of swallowing, where the shadows consume. Such phrases could be poetic, but they could also be distant reverberations of a specific, terrifying location. And the very ambiguity, the lack of a clear, definitive record, only adds to the mystery. It allows the possibility that the story is there, just hidden in plain sight, disguised by metaphor, ritual, or later interpretation. You imagine a scholar poring over a dusty magical papyrus in a library, translating a section dealing with protection spells, encountering a phrase about guarding against the hidden maw or the stone gullet, and simply cataloging it as a generic reference to a demon or an aspect of the underworld. They couldn't know without the key of the Lost Shepherd story that this might be a direct reference to a real specific place, a place that had entered the realm of myth and magic because its reality was too terrifying to comprehend in purely rational terms. The layers of time, language, and belief build up like sediment, burying the original event, leaving only faint impressions on the surface. But those impressions, if you look closely enough, if you know what you're searching for, might just be enough to suggest that the cave and its secret were never entirely lost to history. So after tracing those faint, tantalizing possibilities through millennia of shifting sand and changing cultures, where does that leave you? You've searched the grand monuments, the administrative papyri, the magical spells, the foreign accounts, and the later religious texts. You've imagined the stories being told around campfires, whispered warnings passed from parent to child, perhaps evolving into something almost unrecognizable from the original, terrifying truth. But has the story of the cave where shepherds entered but their sheep returned alone actually survived in any identifiable way to the present day? Or is it just a fascinating historical phantom, a hypothesis you've constructed by weaving together fragments of evidence and possibilities? The honest answer, the one that echoes in the vast, silent spaces of the desert night, is probably not in any clear, unbroken lineage. Folklore is resilient, yes, but it's also fragile. Without continuous cultural transmission, without being actively told and retold, integrated into beliefs, or recorded in some lasting form, stories fade. They become distorted, forgotten, or subsumed into other, more dominant narratives. The specific horror of that cave, that event, witnessed by those early shepherds, might have simply been too localized, too inexplicable, too disturbing to maintain prominence in the grand sweep of history focused on pharaohs and empires. Think about it. If you were an ancient Egyptian scribe writing a religious text or a historical account, would you include a strange, unsettling local tale about a place that just swallowed people? Probably not, unless it could be neatly explained as a manifestation of a known demon, a divine punishment, or linked to a specific myth about the underworld. The mundane, inexplicable horror of the natural world, unchecked by divine order or heroic action, didn't always fit neatly into the structured narratives of ancient Egypt. And as time wore on, as Egypt became part of larger empires, the focus shifted further away from ancient local legends. The Romans were more interested in grain shipments and administrative efficiency than in obscure Egyptian folklore about dangerous wadis. Later, the rise of Christianity and Islam brought new frameworks for understanding the world, often replacing or marginalizing older pagan beliefs and the stories tied to them. A scary place might be explained as being haunted by jinn, or demons, the specific unique mechanism of the swallowing cave lost to a more generic understanding of malevolent forces. So you might not find a neat entry in a modern geological survey or an archaeological report titled Site of Ancient Shepherd Disappearance. The location itself, if it was a real geological anomaly, might still exist. Perhaps it's just a forgotten crack in the earth, partially filled with sand, its deadly secret long buried. Or maybe the geological process that caused it was transient, a localized collapse, a sinkhole that has since stabilized. Without a written record tying the location to the event, it would just be another anonymous feature in the immense, complex landscape of the Egyptian desert. Geologists map faults and formations, but they don't typically map ancient tragedies, unless there's clear physical evidence, like a mass grave or a structure built on a precarious spot. This disconnect between the physical reality, a potentially dangerous location, and the lost human story is a poignant one. Could remnants of the story survive in the oral traditions of isolated communities? It's possible, though increasingly unlikely in the modern world. Bedouin tribes, for instance, have rich oral histories and deep knowledge of the desert landscape, including its dangers. They have tales of spirits, hidden places, and cautionary stories about navigating the harsh environment. But would a specific story tied to an event millennia ago about a cave with this particular terrifying property survive intact? Oral traditions change over time, adapting to the present. A story about a cave that eats people might persist, but the details, the shepherds, the sheep returning alone, could easily be lost or altered, replaced by more contemporary fears or explanations. Historians and folklorists still debate the extent to which very ancient oral traditions can survive without significant distortion or external reinforcement, an open scholarly debate that applies directly to the possibility of this story's persistence. You could hypothetically spend years researching modern Bedouin folklore, geological anomalies in the Egyptian desert, obscure notes in Coptic monastic texts, and marginalia in medieval Arabic manuscripts, hoping to find a consistent thread, a recurring reference that points back to the shepherd's cave. It would be a monumental task, a true deep dive into the fringes of history and folklore. And even then, you might only find tantalizing hints, things that could be related, but lack the definitive link to make you certain. A quirky tidbit about a specific wadi being considered unlucky, a tale about travelers disappearing without a trace near a certain hill, a geological report mentioning an unusual, potentially unstable formation. These could all be faint echoes or entirely unrelated phenomena. Perhaps, in the end, the true legacy of the cave isn't in any surviving record or physical location, but in the enduring power of the story itself, even if it's one we've largely reconstructed. It taps into fundamental human fears, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the earth beneath our feet opening up and swallowing us, the fear of places that defy understanding and order. It's a story about vulnerability, about venturing into the wilderness and encountering a horror that is neither beast nor man, but something primal and terrifying, connected to the very structure of the world. It reminds you that history isn't just about kings and battles and grand civilizations. It's also about the small, terrifying, inexplicable events that happen to ordinary people, shepherds, farmers, travelers. These events, even if they leave no trace in the official histories, shape the way people view their world, influencing their fears, their superstitions, and the cautionary tales they tell. The cave where the shepherds died and the sheep returned alone is a powerful symbol of that other history, the history of fear, mystery, and the untamed power of nature. A mainstream historical fact is that throughout history, unexplained natural phenomena have often been interpreted through the lens of the supernatural or as omens, and stories like this are born from that very human impulse to make sense of the inexplicable. And maybe, just maybe, the story survives not in a specific written record or an identifiable location, but in the collective unconscious, in the way we still feel a shiver when we stand at the edge of a deep chasm, or when we hear a story about people vanishing without a trace in the wilderness. That lingering unease, that sense that the world holds secrets and dangers we can't comprehend. Perhaps that's the true, albeit intangible, legacy of the Shepherd's Cave. The search for its physical location, its mention in ancient texts, becomes less important than the journey the story has taken you on. You've walked with prehistoric nomads, sought shelter with frightened shepherds, felt the unease of the villagers, sifted through the records of empires, and considered the fragmented whispers of later eras. You've seen how a single, terrifying event can resonate, mutate, and potentially fade into the vastness of time. As you lie here letting these thoughts drift through your mind, the images of the desert, the dark cave, the returning sheep, the dust of ages begin to soften. The edges blur. The urgency of the search diminishes, replaced by the gentle pull of sleep. The vastness of history, the endless expanse of the desert night sky you imagined, feels less daunting now, more like a quiet, comfortable blanket settling over you. The mysteries remain, of course. The questions about what happened in that cave, whether it truly existed, whether the story endured, they don't vanish entirely, but their sharp edges are smoothed by the rhythm of your breathing, the slow, steady beat of your heart. The weight of the ages lifts, replaced by the gentle downward drift towards rest. The ancient sands continue their slow, silent journey, covering secrets, eroding memories, indifferent to the stories borne upon their surface. The echoes of the past fade like whispers carried away on a warm desert breeze at sunset. Your journey through time is drawing to a close. There's nothing more to search for tonight. You are safe here now, far from any mysterious caves or ancient dangers. Let the lingering images dissolve into the quiet darkness behind your eyelids. The history is told. The journey is over. It's time to rest. Word count, 2008. End of script, sweet dreams.